the quiz, the first quiz will be live this evening, okay? And you will have 1 week to do that. It is open book. I invite you to challenge yourselves and find out what you know and what you don't know. That the questions are quasi-typical of what you would see on the actual exam. Many of these questions did come off an exam. I'm going to warn everyone right now, if you look at some questions and say, Bernie, that question is unfair, I'm going to say it's not my question. I didn't make up any of them. They are all directly off the exam. And that's important, right? In prior classes, a lot of times I'd put people together and I'd say, Krista, you and Rachel and James are going to be together. And Rachel, I don't want to work with those guys. I want to work with Kevin and Sven because they're my friends, or I don't know these people, right? And who wants to work with people that you don't know? And I used to tell people, welcome to the real world. Every project that I work on, I'm a business consultant. Every single client that I walk in their door are brand new. I don't know you. I don't know how you're going to be. I don't know what the team is going to be like. Welcome to the real world. That's what we do as projects. We are constantly thrust into new situations, and your career will excel based on your ability to handle and adapt to those situations and to size up the people that are on your team and play to those strengths and weaknesses. Some people are going to be really, really aggressive. Other people are going to kind of sit in the back of the room. Some people are going to be really great at computers, really great at planning, et cetera, et cetera. You need to know how to manage all of those personalities. Go ahead.
I have a question. Actually, right now I didn't buy the book. I just have your presentation slides. So it would be enough for this quiz, or?
It will be plenty for the quiz. So the two books, and I think I explained this, and if not, I apologize. I'm going to show two books right now. And again, I'm not having you waste these because we are at the very tail end of PMBOK 6, okay? This here is called the PMBOK, the Project Management Body of Knowledge, and this is PMI standard. This is an incredibly difficult read. You can only really read this for about 20 minutes or a half hour at a time before blood comes out of your nose and you pass out, right? Then you wake up and you keep on going at it. It's written kind of like an encyclopedia. It's just, I would describe it as, it is not a learning text. It is a reference manual. It is someplace that you can go to if you wanted a little more information. A book like this is a learning text, and this is really, it's written, it's readable, right? So it flows a little bit better. It does not go into the same level of depth, but it does a great job of helping you to put everything together. This is a really terrific book. I've been using this gentleman's book for about, I guess, all 8 years. There is another book by a woman who is deceased, although they still use her name, and her name is Rita Mulcahy. And that is also tends to be a very popular book. It is much more detailed than this, much smaller font. But nonetheless, those are kind of the two most popular books. The thing that I like specifically about this book teaches you project management based on process groups. And for whatever reason, I can't possibly fathom, no other books do that. They all teach you in knowledge areas. And so if we looked at that PMI matrix, right, we said that the process groups go up and down, right? So we would basically teach all of the processes in initiating, then all of the processes in planning, and then all of the processes in executing, et cetera, et cetera. And that makes a lot of sense because that's exactly how projects flow. That's what you should know. The other books I find tend to teach side to side in knowledge areas. They say, no. Let's look at stakeholders. Actually, and this even does the same thing. Even the PMBOK does it. Let's look at the stakeholder management knowledge area, and let's talk about the processes that are in initiating for that knowledge area and planning for that knowledge. Well, that is not how a project works at all. That is not how we step through a project. I want, at the end of this, I want you to know that you can manage a project. I don't care what the project is. I want you to know that you can jump into that and start making a meaningful contribution, okay? So enough said about that. So you do not need to purchase the books. You can pass the quizzes by attending the class, watching these wonderful videos, and going through the handouts that we have.
Thank you so much.
Yep, absolutely. For some of the folks, I would ask you again, if you are able to, if you have some special circumstances, certainly your prerogative, but I would like you to turn on your cameras. As I said, I'm looking at all of your faces and I'm watching if you have a question, or if Carmen starts talking and she's muted, or I see someone kind of turn their head like that, or when Sarah starts falling asleep. I'm really reading off of your energy to keep the class moving. So I do appreciate you showing me your smiling faces if you're able to. So with that said, let's jump in. Hello, hello. And so I'm sorry, I don't recognize the name. I just see STD. Can you identify yourself? You're on mute. See, and I wouldn't even know that you were talking to me. You're still on mute? Here. There you are.
Nighat, Nighat.
Okay, okay. All right, welcome, welcome. And then Krista, where'd you go? So Krista, you're brand new. If you want to tell us just real quickly, what do you do for a living? What's your experience with project management? And is there anything specific you hope to get out of the class?
So I'm currently enrolled to get my Master's of Science in Geographic Information Systems, and I have a couple classmates that are in this with me as well. I started an internship the end of January with the CTA, which has been amazing. So I'm hoping that that'll transfer into a full-time job. So fingers crossed, it'll work out.
Very cool. I've done some work with the CTA.
It's pretty cool.
All right, excellent. And anything specific you hope to get out of the class?
I just hope to pass.
Well, I think we'll take, here, I have never had somebody not pass my class ever.
Awesome.
This generally is a easy A class. We are not doing the course project this year, and so sometimes that's a relief. Other times, if you're not a great test taker, that can be harder. What I will tell you, if you are struggling with something, I would consider me a resource. Consider me your subject matter expert, right? You do not need to know everything, but you need to know where to find the information. And I've certainly had students who have said, Professor, can we schedule a 30-minute Zoom call at some point before the quizzes due? Because I need a little bit more. I'm missing something there. I would encourage you to do that if you are struggling with the quizzes. I encourage you to do that. And then also there is the extra credit at the end of the class that, again, is very, very easy. And I'll talk about that a little bit here in about 20 minutes. Okay. Anyone else know? Anybody else was not at the last class?
Hi, I'm new professor.
Hi, Carmen.
Hello. I am a master's student in the IT program here at Elmhurst, and I'm due to graduate, and I have a couple of classes left. So I'm really excited about that. I am currently working for Walgreens as a fraud analyst. I've done that for a couple of years now, and prior I've been doing that for a couple of years now. I have no experience in project management before, and I'm just looking to gain more knowledge and hopefully put this information to good use for, my career-wise.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'm confident that we will absolutely do that, Carmen. Hi, go ahead. Is it Nihat? Am I saying that right, Nihat?
Yes, you're very. Okay, I just want to tell you a little brief about me too.
Sure.
You have. So basically, I'm a pharmacist. I did my doctorate degree from my own country, and here I'm a certified pharmacist, and I tried to do MPhil leading to PhD, but in the meanwhile, I was not interested in that. So the project manager was literally new because I want to work as a manager or management role. So I think I fit myself. So I have no idea about this one, but I think I was interested in that. So I came in this one. So I have no background experience regarding this one. So hopefully I will learn from you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you do too. I feel like we all learn from each other a little bit. One of the things that I will tell you, I've often described this class as an assembly class, and especially if you're doing an MBA, right? Or if your background is business. And the reason I say that is the second word is really one that people overlook. It is project management, right? A big part of what you are doing is, in fact, management. And we are using a lot of the standard things that you have learned all throughout your college career. The key difference with this class is we're going to take it all and I'm going to kind of put everything together and show you how do we carry this out into the real world to an employer to make a meaningful difference, to their organizations. So hopefully NIAT will be able to do that. Welcome, welcome. All right, what we're going to do now is I am going to jump into the first process. So all last week, we were just kind of setting the foundation. We didn't even make it into discussing any of the processes. So we are going to jump in now and we're going to talk about, we're going to start with discussing the project charter. Let's see if I can get this screen shared. Everyone able to see my screen?
Bernie, have you shared these slides or will they be available after class tonight?
So they are shared, and so all of the slides are available via Blackboard.
Okay, I only see last week's in there. Did anyone else find this week's?
Nope.
I only see last week's as well.
I apologize. So here's what I'll do, Krista, and I am very sorry about that. As soon as I'm done with this, because these slides, this is the back half of last week's, they should have been available. I don't know why, but I will log into Blackboard. And make sure that they are available. And I apologize, going forward in the future, they will be available. Typically, they should be available the Monday prior to class. So you should have a few days if you wanted to review it on your own. I don't think a lot of people do, but we'll make that effort.
This looks like page 14 in the first PDF that you uploaded last week.
Yep, perfect. That sounds about right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to get started with our first process group. And we are actually let me go up to. So here's what I want to look at. We remember that we talked about 5 process groups, right? We're going to start with the first one, which is initiating. And so let me step back just a couple slides. The initiating process group is very small. There are only 2 processes here. We will develop a project charter and identify stakeholders. And this is intended to either start a project or to authorize the project to continue into the next phase, okay? And so remember I said in every single phase, we'll use all 5 process groups. So Sven, if I said, which phase A or phase B, would you expect to use the initiating process group? What are you going to tell me, sir? Somebody help him.
I would say A.
Both.
Oh, thank you. You got it. Both is the answer, right? We will use every single process in every single project phase. And so a lot of times, the initiating process group of phase B is going to work like a handoff, like a handshake, right? With the closing process group of phase A. It's going to say the project is still valid. All of our assumptions are still good. Go ahead and continue into the next phase, right? It's almost like a reflection point, and that typically happens more in the closing, but it's intended to begin the project or the project phase. Generally, once we are, generally during the initiating process group, we don't have a lot of details. We've already said that. I have a very high level picture of what the project will actually look like. Sometimes I literally have a sentence on a sheet of paper. That's what I have to get started. And I actually have to work with the customer to build that out a little bit and figure out what are you trying to accomplish. As I said, this works hand in hand with the closing process, process group of the previous phase. We see our matrix here on the screen. This is our PMI matrix. What I'm going to do is, everybody sees that some of the process groups are grayed out. I want to completely forget those. We're going to live over here in the initiating process group only. So block everything out in your mind. There are 2 processes here: identify stakeholders and develop the project charter. We are going to start here with developing the project charter. I'm going to show you this next slide. And again, this is going to be less relevant because very soon, as I said, unfortunately, this is on its way out as the test standard. But in the event that you were learning project management, every process that I'm going to teach, and again, we won't go through all 49, we won't have time, but I think we'll make it through about 38 of them, something like that, 38, 39. every single process will start with a title slide, and this is what it looks like. The title slide identifies the actual name of the process here. So develop project charter, that's the name of this process. It also identifies what process group does it belong to. This particular process belongs to the initiating process group. And then I give you the knowledge area. So we know that it is in project integration management. These are the ones that go sideways. Finally, I give you the page number. That page number references the page number here in the PMBOK, right? If you wanted to go and learn more about it because you're fascinated with developing project charter. So I just want you to know how to use these title slides. Is everyone okay with that? All right. With that said, let's jump in. We're going to talk about developing a project charter. Probably about another 25 minutes or so, we'll take a break. Okay, everyone? The project charter says here that it is applied, and all of these will say this process is applied to. That's how we're going to reference these, right? And when you see applied to, that's telling you that this is the purpose of the process, okay? So developing the project charter, this process is applied to formally authorize a new project to begin or an ongoing project to continue into the next phase. That's what this is used for. Authorization for the project is granted through something that is called a project charter. It's an important document, and I want you to be aware of its existence. The project charter is what formally authorizes the project to begin. I'm going to tell everyone, when you see me, stamp my foot. If I was you, I would pay attention to what I'm saying immediately after that. The project actually begins once the project charter is signed. Okay, the project begins when the project charter is signed. The project charter typically is signed by someone who has funding authority. It is someone who is authorized to approve the expenditure of those funds. Ordinarily, we would refer to this individual as the project sponsor, right? Somebody who is able to commit the funds. So we want to know that the project starts when the project charter is signed. Great. What the heck's a project charter? A project charter is a very brief document that formally authorizes the project or the project phase. And I want you to keep in mind, brevity is key. It is brief. If you see something that talks about lots and lots of details, that ain't the project charter. The project charter is very high level. It provides a high level for the scope. And also sometimes it'll give the schedule and a preliminary budget, right? Or what we might call preliminary characteristics of the project. I encourage whoever is assembling this, listen, Kevin, if you know the information, put as much information into this as you have available. Tell me if you know who the project manager is and if you know that this needs to be done by May and what the risks are, et cetera, et cetera. But as a general rule of thumb, this is the beginning of the project. There's not a ton of information here. It says here that this typically assigns the project manager and defines levels of authority and commits funding. I'll tell you that it's been my experience that the project manager is not always assigned here, right? But that's neither here nor there. In the event that there is a conflict between something that Bernie says or something that you've experienced throughout your own career and what this book says, if you were taking the test, this book is always the answer, right? This is always the right answer. So regardless of what Bernie says, the project charter would typically assign the project manager. Just not been my experience. Commonly identifies initial requirements. When we talk about those requirements, I'm referring to some of those key constraints, right? Scope, schedule, budget. What are we trying to create? Identifies the sponsor, because that's the individuals who'll be signing it. Some of the key deliverables. We talked about that word deliverable last week. What's a deliverable? Anybody remember?
Anything that basically is a product of, well, something that has an outcome. Would that make sense?
Sufi, I think that you're saying the same thing. I'm going to give it a little more of a formal definition, but the answer is you're right. But we are going to say that a deliverable is a tangible, verifiable product or outcome or result that we can turn over at the end of the project, right? That's what we're doing. Projects are all about creating deliverables, something that we can turn over to the client at the end. Absolutely.
When we talk about that, is this typically something that is referenced as a specific aspect of the actual project itself, or is it usually the culmination of the project?
Jeff, so I'm going to say, sorry, James, I'm going to say both. So what I'm going to say is I encourage you, anytime that you put a project plan together, I'll grab one from the other room. I'm sure that I have a bunch of them laying around. When I write a proposal for a client, even though I'm a consultant, I approach everything, and I think everything's a project. Everything, as long as it's temporary, has a unique deliverable or result, and it's progressively elaborated, it is a project. I live in this world. This is all I do all day long, every day.
Let me ask you this, that we'll use your Midway as an example.
Yep.
So when they did that, you had, I believe there had to have been land that was purchased probably because they had to basically reroute Cicero Avenue. So would the purchase of that land and acquisition of that land be considered a deliverable then?
Yes, sir. 100%.
So it's not necessarily just work that's being done. It's key aspects of the project as well.
Right. It can be a verifiable result or outcome as well, right? So a tangible, verifiable product, result, or outcome, something that can be verified in the
like an engineering study.
Yep, absolutely. An engineering study, a feasibility analysis. It can be a new sidewalk. It can be a building that was built, a concourse that was built. It can be a new Boeing aircraft. All of these are deliverables, or any component of it. It can be the landing gear of it, if that's what your project was, if that's, what I'll call the boundaries of that project. Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Sven.
I was going to ask you if you can just help me understand better. What does a customer or a client comes up to you and they say what? Like, what do you exactly, like, how do you, what are the steps that they come up to you? And then you said you're consulting. Like, what do you exactly do? If you can just give me a little better picture to understand.
Work miracles.
Excuse me?
I actually describe myself, I'm a problem solver. And so people come to me with things that they want to get done and they are not sure how to do it, or sometimes they think they know how to do it and they just don't have the skills. My phone would ring, and this is a bit off the beaten path, but I think it's germane to what we're discussing this evening. My phone would ring and Krista calls and says, "Hi, Bernie, I have company ABC and here's what I'm trying to do." Ordinarily, I would schedule a no cost, no obligation discovery session with Krista where she would come in and I would say, "Krista, tell me a bit about your business and what it is that you're trying to accomplish." Typically, what I do is everyone familiar with, I'm going to stretch this out so I can see all your smiling faces. Is everyone familiar with what a gap analysis is? Gap analysis is something that I use extensively. And so what I try to get out of Krista is I say, "Krista, listen, if I'm going to help your business, if I'm going to help you to get to someplace, I need to know two things. Where is your business today and where do you want to be, right?" And so what I can do is once I understand those 2 points, right, I can assess what is the gap between those 2 points, right? And from there, I can help to develop a reconciliation strategy. There's a little more depth that goes into it because as I think that I shared with everyone, most of the time when someone comes to me, so if I'm helping and Sarah says, "Listen, Bernie, I want my business to be here." A lot of times I'll push back a little bit and I'll say, "Sarah, why? Why do you want to be there?" And again, I'm not saying it's not the place to be, but just help me understand why you want to get there. And I always say, you should strive to understand the why behind your client's what, right? So if you say, "Bernie, listen, I don't want you to worry about that, just do it," I'm happy to do it. But the worst thing that I could hear as a consultant is Sarah says, "Hey, Bernie, you gave me exactly what I wanted, but it wasn't what I needed," right? And so if I say, if you help me to understand the why behind that, I can help, I can really help you to evaluate whether or not that's the best thing. So Ashley comes to me and says, "Bernie, listen, I'd like to hire you. We want to implement a new software out on the dock." And I say, why? And she says, well, what do you mean? That's just what I want to do. And I say, that's not what you want to do. Nobody wants to install a new software on the dock. You believe that the software is a problem, or excuse me, is a solution to some problem. What problem are you trying to solve? And she says, oh, right, okay. So I think what the problem is that orders aren't going out on time, or they're going to the, okay, I got it now, right? So a lot of times, instead of just telling me what you want me to do, I want to expand that a little bit, and I want to understand the why behind that. And we're going to talk about that here in a few slides. From there, Sven, once I have, and I apologize, I know that this is long-winded answer to your question. I know where you are and where you want to be. The gap analysis, again, refers to the disparity between those 2 points in time. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to develop a strategy or a scope of services that I believe, if executed, will either eliminate that gap or will at least bring it closer together, right? Sometimes I'll say, again, don't try to boil the ocean. We're going to actually take this in 2 steps or 3 steps, right? Once I plan that scope, we'll go into determining who needs to do it and how much does it cost and how long it's going to take and what's needed, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, but let me ask you an additional question. Just a last one. What if that client's niche or area of where he's doing his business is really not your strongest point? You really have no idea. It's so strictly specialized, and it's really not a lot of people can do that. And you're like being honest, and you say, I really don't know how to help you. Do you ever come up to that answer as well, or you
probably turn down 2 or 3 clients on a monthly basis, almost every month, and sometimes many more. I've grown my business to a point now that it's a little easier. When I first started, right, and people go, well, what do you do? And I go, whatever you want me to do, right? I don't care, because I'm looking for a client. And so I've come to the point, I know what we're really, really good at. I will knock on wood. We've worked with about 110, maybe 110 companies. If you worked with me, you love me, hands down, every client. I have not had a single project that has not gone awesome. And I mean that, not like there's one where I gave you your money back and nope. If I've accepted the project, I've knocked it out of the park. And a big part of that is making sure, and we will talk a little bit about ethics on the very last night, making sure that if I accept the project, I know that I'm going to make a meaningful contribution to that. So people come and they want to do, and here's what I'll tell you too, for those of you, anyone who's touching sales, some odd thing happens when I say no. People really want to buy from you all the more, and I don't necessarily get it. So I'll tell people all the time, I'll say, Jeff, listen, I'm not your consultant. I want to be your consultant. I wish I was your consultant. I'm just not the guy, right? So you want to open a restaurant? I don't do that, right? I mean, I can help you to build it out. I can help you to form the company, hire employees, things like that. But I don't run restaurants. You know what I mean? There's a consultant for you. Go Google restaurant consultant. That's who you should be using, right? And it's not that I can't do it, Sven. I can, right? But you're going to pay me more so I can learn on your dime. I'm not going to be a good fit for your business, right? Go get a different consultant, and that's what they do. Something about that makes people go, but I want to work with you, right? And so I don't know how to say it. At the end of the day, I think that nobody likes being sold to. People like buying. And so I think that there's something to be said for just absolute sincere honesty. I've got a project assistant who's worked with me for many years, and I'm trying to push her out of the nest, and now I've pushed her too far because she'll be leaving me here in the near future. But I'm like, go take your own clients. And she's like, Bernie, I can't. They could ask me anything. What if they ask me something I don't know? And I say, no, I say, I don't know all the time, right? And I think people respect that. You go, well, Bernie, what do you do here? And I go, I don't know. That's not what I do. It's not my wheelhouse, right? So we don't ever blow smoke. We'll tell you the honest thing. And when we get to the last night, we're going to talk about your ethical responsibilities as a project manager. And those responsibilities include, you are never allowed to sell yourself beyond your capabilities, right? I'm not going to tell a client that I can do something, give me all this money, and then I crash the project into the rocks. Okay. Sorry, James.
No, just a quick question. It seems to me, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, is part of what you're supposed to be doing is finding the people that can do that stuff that you don't know. Is that not part of it? Or are you talking about something that's so far outside of your scope?
Yeah, James, so there are a lot of things that I would bring in channel partners. For instance, I'm not a marketer. I think that we do awesome at marketing strategy. But I don't do design. There's some heavy lifting stuff that I don't do in IT. We bring in partners for that. But again, I don't want to do restaurants. That's not what I do. I could find someone to do it, but Sven's a consultant who does restaurants. Sven charges $200. I mean, I got to make something off. You know what I'm saying? It's not worth my time. Or healthcare. I don't do healthcare. I'm not up to speed on the HIPAA laws. If you wanted to do banking, I don't do banking. Can I do it? The answer is absolutely. But I promise you, I'm going to charge you more than if you just went to Sven. Go find Sven on Google. He's the right consultant for you. So, and again, I'm not trying to talk myself out of the work. I'm just not going to be a good fit. My reputation is strong enough that, for me to make $12,000 or $15,000 or $20,000, it's not worth it for me to compromise it. And Sufi goes, yeah, we worked with that Midwest Business Consulting, but man, are they expensive, right? Yeah, no, you got to get value out of it, right? There's got to be a mutual benefit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I was thinking along the lines of, depending on what the project is there's probably going to be aspects of it. And I guess my focus more on project management is probably more around actual like physical, tangible items, as opposed to some of the other stuff that can be involved with like IT stuff where it's more software related. And I guess that's why I'm kind of getting hung up there, because I'm always thinking of that more physical thing and not realizing the different avenues of project management.
Yeah, right. And project management is everything, right? Software to skyscrapers. I don't care what you're trying to do. I can do anything with project management. It is in healthcare. It is in teaching. It is in course development. It is in software. It is in building roads, developing vaccines. The COVID used the heck out of it, right? So project management is absolutely everywhere. It is, in my opinion, universal. We can apply it to anything.
Yeah, I guess, and then that's not to get too down the beaten path. Like you think of like a contractor for houses like that. That's like a type of project management. So I guess you have different functions depending on what field you're in. You might have different titles for it as well.
Yeah. And that project manager would not accept a project if they said, "Hey, I'd like you to build a warship." You know what I mean? Just because you build that thing doesn't mean that you can build that thing, right? And certainly that person, he or she, probably is a general contractor. And if I needed to, I could actually probably go out and start, research the market, contracting with people, and I could do that. I'm just adding a lot of overhead to it. It's kind of out of my wheelhouse.
So just to sum it up, you're saying that a good project manager needs to be fairly objective and knows his strengths and basically accept his jobs based on that, and not based on, of course, his hunger for money, right?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you both things. So again, I can, we're getting a little bit off the beaten path here. So, and it's funny because I'm actually teaching another class on Mondays and Wednesdays. I'm teaching an entrepreneur class for a completely different client. So a lot of this stuff is overlapping. The way that I don't want to say get rich, because by no stretch of the imagination rich, but the way that I make money is I don't make my money off Joe today. That's not what it's about, right? I don't want to gouge you and I got 3 months of work. I want to deliver value for you, and I want a client for life. And not only a client for life, but someone's going to go, listen, if you got something, this is the guy to use. You want to reach out to Bernie. He's going to take care of you. He's a good guy. Don't be short-sighted. I literally just got off the phone. I formed a joint venture and we're working on a project, and one of the partners wants to charge $5,000 on something. And my point to this partner, there's 3 of us. Why? You're going to stress the relationship. It's a brand new relationship. At the end of the day, there's 3 of us. So say that it's $1,700. You're being very short-sighted. If that's really what it's about, I'll give you the $1,700 and let's stop talking about it. So let's just be done with it. It's not worth it. $1,700 is right now. It's immediate. It's today, right? I'm looking at the future and saying, again, think about what we're going to make off this contract. This is a 5-year contract. And I mean, we're going to make a ton of money. You're worried about $1,700. Don't focus on that, right? Does that make sense to everyone? And again, maybe a little bit off the beaten path, but I still think, especially for those of you who may go off and do something on your own, very, very valid discussion. Okay. Okay, so jumping back in, Talking about this project charter, so where did we get the details for that? Like I said, sometimes there are no details, right? And I shouldn't use the word detail, but there are very limited information available. But typically what we might use to start putting some of those preliminary characteristics, what I might call a summary budget or a high level budget, a 10,000 foot view of the project, whatever we want to refer to it as. The first one can be what's called a feasibility analysis. And a feasibility analysis here says that it is a formal study which seeks to evaluate the merits of a project. Oftentimes, the merits of the project mean A, can it be done, and B, will there be an ROI, right? Is there some benefit? ROI, as we said, doesn't always need money because we don't all define return the same way, but the feasibility analysis will often result in what is called a go, no-go decision, okay? And that means we will move forward with the project or we will not. Typical goals of a project include to solve an existing problem, prevent future problems, increase productivity or efficiencies. It can be to capitalize on two opportunities, decrease cost, et cetera. In another life, and I do still do this in aviation, I just do it much less because I'm a much smaller company. We would go into an airport and I would do what is called the feasibility study to see whether or not it makes sense to install what is called an airline consortium at your airport. An airline consortium, instead of every airline doing their own thing, instead of, Southwest, they have their own mechanics and equipment and tools and shop areas and phone and computers and dispatchers and insurance and all of these other things. And that Delta has theirs, and United and American and JetBlue and Royal Jordanian and all of these companies have all of their own stuff. I say, listen, instead of having 17 managers, right, because there's 17 airlines, you have 17 managers for your maintenance and 17 maintenance crews and 17 offices, et cetera, et cetera. And you all are using the same bag system. So everybody need that motor right there. Sufi, you need to keep 7 of those in stock. Sarah needs to keep 9 of them in stock. Sven needs to keep 3. Krista needs to keep 4. Why don't you just let me do it for everyone? I'll have 1 manager, 1 maintenance crew, 1 office space. I'll keep 15 motors and I'll give them to whoever. We combine everything under one roof, right? It allows us to achieve some really impressive economies of scale. This makes sense, the concept? In order to get one of those started, what I do is I go to the airport and I say, listen, I need you to show me everything. I want to know everything that everyone has been spending for the last 2 years. And I'm going to hold those numbers off to one side. And then I'm going to develop an operating model for what this new company would look like. So I start with a blank sheet of paper and I essentially design a 10 or a $12 million company on the backside of a sheet of paper. And I say, here's what it would look like, and here's how we'd staff it, and here's what we would need, et cetera, et cetera. So this would cost this, and you're currently spending that. Is there a positive ROI? This is the feasibility analysis to see, in the event that we were to do this, does it make sense, right? Is it a feasible business venture? Does this make sense to everyone? Questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Make a feasibility analysis. If something is not like you reach to a conclusion that this is not good, like this can be possible. Is there any way you can give them like some kind of like advice or something to manage, or you just tell them, okay, this is not possible and we're not gonna do this project? Is this happen during
so ordinarily, I'll go back to what Sven said. If I'm performing the feasibility analysis, I really need to be an objective party. I don't have a dog in the fight, right? If I am selling, right, what the feasibility analysis is, I kind of have a little bit of a conflict of interest, and that has happened in the past. I have gone, so I did a feasibility study for Indianapolis, and there was an ROI, but it wasn't enough of an ROI to overcome some political forces that were out there, particularly to do with the unions there in Indy. We did one for New Orleans just a while ago, and that consortium is up and running. Essentially, though, once I perform it, I'm only presenting the facts, right? And it really needs to be objective. Can I defend it? The answer is absolutely, right? But again, I'm going to really just keep ethics at the forefront, right? So the idea of a feasibility analysis, listen, at the end of the day, I'm going to give you a good Homer Simpsonism, right? Homer says, listen, facts schmacks. You can use facts to prove anything. And that's absolutely true, right? Another, from The Simpsons is the guy, Lionel Hutz, who sells houses, says, listen, there's the truth, and there's the truth. And that's absolutely right. There is a certain way to tell a story. I would tell you that ethically, your job is to be as objective as possible and present the facts in as much of an unbiased fashion as you can. I don't believe that it's possible for human beings to get rid of all bias. And I believe that based on what's been happening in the United States and even around the world most recently, we recognize that we do have biases, whatever those biases are, right? And it's very difficult to get rid of them. But still, you have a ethical obligation to your client to present the facts in a very transparent and unbiased fashion and let the facts speak for themselves rather than trying to prove something, because you can use facts to prove anything. I can highlight these and kind of downplay these or justify those, right? So you want to make sure that you're unbiased. Okay. So we have our feasibility analysis, and this may or may not be completed. I don't want you to feel that every project will have a feasibility analysis, because nothing could be further from the truth. Sometimes this feasibility study will go just beyond that, and we may actually develop a full-blown business case. And Nihat, this might be a little bit more about what you were asking. The business case will go a little bit more in depth. Instead of just simply presenting the facts in a very vanilla and unbiased fashion, it'll say, listen, here's the problem that we were trying to solve, right? So here's kind of why we undertook it. Here are some of the solutions that we have. Here are the pros and cons and cost and returns of each of those. And we can do what is called a cost benefit analysis, which ultimately is kind of what the feasibility study does. It is very common that the feasibility study will actually become a part of the business case, okay? So the feasibility study might just be a chapter or a section in the business case. The business case is just a little more in depth, and it opines, right, on what is the most appropriate thing to do, or it provides a decision. One of the things, and this was recently introduced, and I think it's a very good thing, a project may include what is called a benefits management plan. And the benefits management plan, very much, I think, Katie, I was digging in, and Katie said, well, Bernie, I want to implement a software solution out of the dock. And I said, no, that's not what you want to do. You think that that's a solution to the problem. What is the benefit of doing that, right? Everyone understands why I was digging in a little bit. I wanted to understand the why behind the what. Well, guess what? The benefits management plan tells the project manager that you really should think about that. What is the benefit? Why are you doing this, right? And so it says here that in the benefit, once again, I'm going to stress, I can't tell you what is a benefit to you or what isn't a benefit. I can't tell you what to like or what not to like. For some organizations, it might be money. For other organizations, it could be the public good. Some of them could be public relations, some of them, right? There's a number of things. Every organization will define their own definition for what business value is, okay? And so benefits, as we talk about it, it says here that they are defined as the outcome of actions, products, or services that provide some value to the sponsoring organization, okay? Or the intended beneficiaries. So again, having sidewalks, who is the beneficiary? The public, right? Sometimes, again, remember, every stakeholder isn't necessarily an individual. It can be a group, right? The benefits management plan helps the project team to understand who is the intended beneficiary, how will you benefit by this, and when will you benefit by it? Okay. And so I just want you to kind of understand that. And again, I'm going to encourage you, dive in a little bit and understand the why behind the what. Not only do I want my project manager to know this, I want my whole project team to know this. At the end of the day, if I'm working with John and I say, John, listen, something comes up and I say, John, do this. And then something comes up and I say, John, do that. John knows that I asked him to do this or do that, but he doesn't really know what he's doing. If I help John to understand what are we trying to accomplish and why are we trying to accomplish it, John may be able to make a lot better decisions for the organization, right? And so I want my team to understand as much as possible about what it is that we are truly trying to achieve.
Excuse me, Vernon.
Yes, ma'am.
So or manager is the same person, or the company hired different benefit manager? So it's the same, like the project manager is the same thing? Like,
Yeah, so Nia, I wouldn't call it a benefits manager. There could be. I'm not gonna rule out that role. But I'm saying the project manager would develop a benefits management plan. So I would sit down with the sponsor and say, tell me why you want to do this, right? What is the benefit? I know the what, right? I want to know the why.
okay.
So it certainly could be. I've never participated in a project where there has been a benefits manager, but that actually makes a lot of sense, right? And I think it's a good idea if the project was large enough to support one.
Mm-hmm.
So to an extent, you're almost functioning kind of like a salesperson, because you're basically trying to get a baseline for it to see what the end result really wants to be at that point.
Well, so again, Jeff, I'm gonna go back to, you told me exactly what you want, and I did that, and I gave you what you want, but it wasn't what you needed. So let's stick on the concept of Katie says, Bernie, do me a favor. I need you to go out to the dock and get this software rolled out. And I say, okay, perfect. So I install the software, and we already know, even though Katie and I didn't talk about this, but I'm not managing the benefits of what Katie's hoping to realize. And so I install the software out there, the CRM. Well, guess what? Katie looks a month later and orders, they're the exact same. She has not benefited. Who's in software? Why not? What else could I have done? I could have designed processes and procedures. I could have done implementation training with the team. I could have put check-in point. I could have put a number of things in to help Katie be successful if I knew that she was trying to reduce orders. But if all I did was say, install the software, I can just go out there with a disk, put it in and walk out. That doesn't mean that Katie's going to get the result. It doesn't mean she won't. But in this instance, more than likely, she's not going to. We have got to put a process in place to where we are sure user adoption is going to be one of the biggest challenges for Katie. And then also, how do you use it, right? How do you do this? So it's not as simple as installing the software. If I don't take the time, though, to understand what is the benefit, what are you trying to accomplish, I'm going to go install the software. Katie's going to go, that company stinks, right? I paid them to do this and they didn't solve my problem. It's like, we didn't talk about a problem. All you did was tell me what you wanted me to do. Does everyone
How often do you have a scenario where they ask you for something and you end up completely changing what they really want?
Very often, yeah. Yeah, very often. Remember, I told you that projects, James, are progressively elaborated. And I said they're going to morph. It's not going to be the same on day one that it was. Again, you had some idea in your mind. You thought that this is what you wanted, and it's evolved significantly. That is not terribly uncommon. It's still a building. It's just a different type of building. Speaking of buildings, for the next 2 or 3 nights, we are going to leverage an example from the corner of 79th and Central Avenue, where we are going to build a new Walgreens. And I use this example because this is what was happening when I put this course together. I live just down the street from here. And so what this was is there was actually, let me get a pen. Just a few more minutes and we'll take a break. Interesting, this will not let me get a pen. We can get a laser pointer, okay. This is Central Avenue, this is 79th Street. There was a building here, and this building housed a few different businesses. One of them was Chuck's Southern Comforts Cafe. If you haven't, you must. It's very good. It is New Orleans-inspired Creole cuisine, one of the few gourmet restaurants that the South Side has to offer. We have greasy spoons and burgers. That's what we got on the South Side.
Is it still there?
It is small. No, it is not. So it moved, but it is about 1.5 miles from there. And there's also another one of these in Burr Ridge, I believe, or yeah, Darien. It's in Darien.
I was just in this area the other day, so.
Yeah. So
You have to get the barbecue nachos.
The barbecue, now everything's phenomenal, right? So yeah, Chuck's does a great job. But so Chuck's Southern Comforts Cafe was right here, and then there was like a cell phone shop and a smoke shop and some little corner store. And there's also 2 residential properties that are, and there's a bunch of them that run, you know, there's several homes that run along. But in order to build this Walgreens here, everybody knows that Walgreens had a strategy where they wanted to be on a corner. So right now, there is presently, at the time that this is happening, there's a Walgreens about 150 feet from here over on State Road, but it's not a corner. And Walgreens has a business model where they need to be on the corner. So in order to make this work, this is the footprint that they need, which means that they would need to purchase this building as well as 2 of the residential properties that are there. Once they have purchased these, from there, they will actually start the project, okay? But they need to acquire all 3 of those. Are we okay with this project? Everyone got it? All right. And again, really just for the next couple nights, I just want to illustrate a few things. So we're going to talk about that. Let's get back to this process, developing the project charter. We've got a few inputs. Remember, we said that every process, and this is a process, this is the first process that we are referring to. Every process will have a series of inputs that we will do something to. That something we are going to refer to as tools and techniques for the purpose of producing an output. So we will, if we wanted to develop a project charter, we will retrieve and assemble a number of business documents. And those may be some of the things that we talked about: feasibility analysis, business case, benefit management plan, etc. We may also look at any agreements that we have in place. It is not uncommon that a business has freestanding agreements in place before things happen. And they can even be like union agreements, collective bargaining agreements, MOUs, different SLAs if we had to hit something, right? So service level agreements. If I'm going to hire James's company to come in and install a new bag system for me here at Midway Airport, it's important. I need to know, dude, your system's got to hit 5,000 bags an hour, right? LOIs, things like that. So we want to know, we want to understand what's happened today. Enterprise environmental factors. Again, is it a union environment? Is it an airport? Guess what? If it's an airport, it's going to be incredibly difficult because every single employee who comes on board is going to have to be screened. You need to have a background check. You need to have all of these things. I have to think about where people are going to park. Guess what? TSA is not going to be super happy that you want to bring drill bits and tools and razor blades into the airport. We're going to have to make some special accommodations for stuff. All of those things, if I know that up front, need to be reflected in the, or don't need to be, but are often reflected in the charter. Also, organizational process assets. Do you know what would be really, really helpful to Kevin if he had to put one of these together? If he had an example of what one looked like, right? That would be an organizational process asset. Going back to our Walgreens project, you know what would be even more helpful? If he had a project charter from a previous Walgreens. Oh my God, like that's awesome, right? That's like having somebody give you your homework assignment. You don't have to do it because it's already done for you. So we want to always consider our organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors as we plan and execute the project. The tools and techniques that we use, once we have assembled, we've collected and assembled those documents, we will rely on expert judgments. And it says here, if I was to give you a definition, this refers to knowledge that is provided, knowledge that is provided from any qualified source who may have specific expertise in a specific knowledge area of the project, a discipline, or an industry. And that person we can leverage to help us to develop a realistic charter. It says that absolutely anyone, you might know, you might be a good electrician, right? You might be really good at project management. You might know the Walgreens brand really well. You might know Midway Airport really well. You might be really good at just working with the customers like a business analyst, right? What does this sound an awful lot like? Who does this sound like?
Subject matter expert.
Sarah, you got it. Hit the nail on the head. This is our SMEs, right? I told you we are going to rely on SMEs very heavily throughout the project. So every time that you hear me say expert judgment from now on, you know that I'm saying, listen, we are going to leverage SMEs as necessary. Great job, folks. I heard someone else say it there as well. These are our subject matter experts. Data gathering, as we are trying to build out what does this charter look like, and I need to give something over to Sven, right? What does this look like? I may need to pull some information, some additional information out of our sponsors and out of key stakeholders. As we are trying to gather data, we may use a number of tools such as brainstorming, focus groups. We may do one-on-one interviews. I may sit down and say, Katie, do you have time for me next week? I'd like to grab about 30 minutes here on your calendar. Maybe we can walk through some of this. As a matter of fact, the bag system that I think I was having James's company build for me, I installed that bag system at Midway. It cost about $43.5 million. It was the most successful project on the planet when we put it in. I'm not bragging, that's the honest to God truth. We had people come in from our federal government. We had delegations come in from China, from all over the world, from different airports and different airlines, and say, what did you do? Because there is no other project that is proceeding as successfully, as quickly, and as inexpensively as this project is. We did a great job. We had lightning in a bottle. When we started that project, I gathered a large group of people, and I said, so I got people from the TSA and people from the city, and I got electricians, and I got people from security, and I got the people who were going to maintain it, and architects and designers and engineers. And I brought about 50 people together. And at the front of the room, I had 5 people with pens writing stuff down. And we said, okay, what's important? Go. And we scribbled down everything that we write. And we were collecting just a tremendous amount of information at once to determine what do we need to be thinking about. At some point, I boiled that down a little bit. And I said, okay, I'm just going to, let's just grab the security folks, right? Let's clarify and expand on these goals and really work on it. What I'm doing right now is I am facilitating a number of discussions for the purpose of almost pulling information out of people, the information that I need, right? I might refer to this as requirements gathering is what I might say, okay? So data gathering is one of the key tools that we will use to help us to collect additional requirements that should be captured in the project charter. We will also use extensively throughout project management, interpersonal skills and team skills. I'm going to tell you right now, you've probably heard of these. These are called soft skills. My ability to get information out of you, and even to an extent to have you learn this evening, relies on the fact that hopefully you like me. I'm entertaining, I'm friendly. If I was a jerk, if I was boring, if my personality was abrasive, brash, or off-putting, you might not get the same thing from the course. So my job is to make sure that I'm trying to build a connection. Hopefully everyone recognizes that I've gone out of my way to say your names many times and keep everyone engaged in the class, right? This helps us to build a stronger rapport together, and you will get much more out of the class. If you haven't, I would recommend that if you are in the business world, there's a book that came out in the 1930s, and it's by a gentleman named Dale Carnegie, and the book is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And what it says is that one of the sweetest sounds to our own ears is our own name, right? And so you go to see a salesperson and they go, Carmen, let me ask you this. What do I got to do to put you in this car today? You like the car, don't you, Carmen? I can tell you like the car. James, do me a favor, get Carmen this, right? I'm trying to form that bridge. I'm trying to form that connection. That bond, that rapport that we will develop, hopefully, if we don't already have that connection, right? I'm sorry, we just met, but that is going to help me to get things done that I need to get done. And it'll be the exact same thing with your stakeholder group, right? So we will use those interpersonal skills to help me to get the information that I need. Some of the key interpersonal skills that we'll use here will be conflict management. Krista says, Bernie, I think it has to be that way. And Kevin goes, what are you talking about? No way, that's crazy. No, it should be this way, right? At some point, I need to help people to build consensus. I need one way. I can't do it both ways. I mean, maybe I can. We'll talk about that as well. But I need to manage conflict with people, right? I need to be able to facilitate or to get information out of people. I've got to be able to manage meetings and make sure that they're productive, right? So in this class, we recognize we have a certain agenda, and that agenda must be hit. If the discussion is going too far off the beaten path, I go, okay, we're going to have to come back. Let's talk about that on the break. Or if someone has a question or they're not getting it, right? Or if Kevin and Sven are talking about sports, and go, guys, hey, we've got to do this, right? Talk on the break or go grab a beer after work or whatever you want to do. My job is to control what's happening during this time because we've got an objective that we need to hit, okay? Also, something that's going to be used extensively in project management, and sometimes people think this is silly, and I'm one of those people, but they will refer to meetings as a tool and technique. A meeting essentially means that we will gather people, we'll bring them together, as I said, for a defined purpose. So we will bring stakeholders together, and in this instance, we will help to define what does success look like, what are the key deliverables that we should mention, some of those high-level requirements, summary milestones, et cetera, et cetera. What's a milestone? Right here, summary milestones. What's a, if we said milestone, what are we talking about?
Points in the project that you're trying to meet. So whether it be like, if you have to build 1,000 feet of, runway, every 250 feet might be a milestone.
You got it, James. Great job. Some significant achievement or event or happening within the project that we use kind of like a measuring stick, right? Absolutely. The key output here, right? The primary output. So remember, this is nothing but a process. We use all of those inputs. We did something to those inputs. And the purpose is we have produced a project charter. And remember, this refers to the formal document that authorizes the project to begin or to proceed into the next phase, some of the things that it may include. The purpose behind the project, what are our success criteria, high-level requirements and risks, maybe who the project manager is, some of the stakeholders that we should be thinking about, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so there is not necessarily a right way or a wrong way to create a project charter. Again, brevity is important. A project charter is not 15 or 20 pages. That's getting more into a full-blown project plan. When I was at Midway, my boss he would not drink the Kool-Aid and said, I don't believe in all this project management stuff, and I'm not signing no stupid charter. And I said, oh, okay. Just to make sure that I understand, though, I'm going to write everything down that I think that you are asking me to do. And then just look over it. And if you could just initial it and sign it and say, yeah, Bernie, that is in fact what you should be doing. What did I just do?
Project charter.
I created a charter, right? I just didn't call it that. He signed it. At the end of the day, I got what I needed, which was a documented direction for the project. As project managers, it is important to recognize that you will not always be able to turn the wind, but you can certainly turn the sail, right? So control the things that are within your control. Another document that may come out of this, and I'm going to encourage you to keep this as you step through the project, is something that is called an assumptions log, and it is precisely what it sounds like. It is all of the assumptions that are in place when you came up with this project plan. So if I come to you and I say, Ashley, what the heck were you thinking? Ashley goes, Bernie, I don't know, that was a year ago. Oh, here's what I was thinking. And I go, oh, okay, actually that makes perfect sense then, because that was a sound business decision based on the way that the assumptions were. Guess what happened when COVID came on? The world turned upside down, right? And if I asked you, if I tried to hold you accountable by today's standards for decisions that were made pre-COVID, it may look as though you've made some pretty poor decisions, right? We would want to know what were the assumptions that were in place that we were using to make our decisions. Okay. Rachel, I like your dog. All right. There will be a quick review at the end of this. Once again, these were the inputs that we discussed, right? Business documents, agreements, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational process assets, the tools and techniques that we discussed, and then finally the outputs, right? So all taken together, this is called a process. Are we good? Questions, concerns? Let's do this. I don't have a clock. Give me just a second here.
7:45 exactly.
Thank you so much. Let's take 10 minutes, folks. We'll come back at 7:55. We'll jump in. We'll finish the next process, and then we'll get into the second night. I'm also going to make the presentation available for this evening's course. Again, I apologize.
Bernard, just to explain the letter of intent, what it is.
Sorry, Nihat, say that one more time for me.
The letter of intent. What did you say about this? What
So
is
an LOI is something that it's not terribly different than an MOU. A letter of intent says, I would use a letter of intent, Nihat. Let's say that you and I had an intention to form a business. And so what we would do is I would say, listen, you're a really good architect, or you're a really good pharmacist, actually, and I'm really good at running businesses. And what I would like to do is let us try to open up a Walgreens. If we were going to do that, you and I would form a joint venture, or we would form a company together. Well, here's the thing. We don't want to go through the expense of forming a company unless we're able to actually get the store off the ground. No problem, Sufi. Thank you so much for that. And so if that's the case, what we will do is we will sign an LOI, and the LOI identifies a preliminary agreement between you and I that says, if we can get this business, we will form this company on these terms. It's like a preliminary agreement. Does that make sense? So, and it's documented, and that's huge. I have one that I can probably grab here behind me, so.
Thank you so much.
Too easy. I want to stop sharing this for a second. How are we doing with pace this evening, everyone? Good, Krista?
Good, it's good.
All right. Thank you, Perry. Did you get the money question? I am still in my office.
Professor, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
When you were kind of talking about IT and like using softwares, I was going to mention it, but I didn't want to get too sidetracked. When, as a project manager, will you at times find more cost-effective solutions for a company? So kind of like you were talking about, you're teaching them maybe how to use what you've installed or whatever the project might be, but is it our ethical duty to find the most cost-effective solution?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of times that we will, so Katie, when we get to probably night 4, we're going to talk about procurement. And as we get into procurement, we will talk about the competitive bidding process and what that looks like. So the answer is absolutely.
Is that what sets a good management company apart from another, where others might not be as ethical and they just want to get the project done? They don't want to really research what's best for the customer. But then obviously that's like maybe a slim chance, but then there's people who operate a little more ethically that will go the extra step.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, I mean, there's, every type of company under the world exists. And so, but yeah, I mean, as a project manager, you should be trying to deliver value to the client.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And we will talk about procurement, Katie, like I said, when we get to night 4, and we'll hopefully kind of build that out a little bit.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. So did everybody see the lawyer that got stuck with the cat? Which is pretty funny. So I've seen it a couple times now and everyone keeps sending it to me. So there was a lawyer who was going to court over Zoom and apparently got stuck with a cat filter on. If you haven't seen it, Google it. Let me see here. I don't know why, for some reason I have to.
I'm Googling that right now. I did not hear about that.
And then he wanted to proceed with court with.
He wanted to proceed. You got it. Yep. Yes, he did.
Did they say try to take the filter off, or?
Well, yeah, but he didn't know how to do it. He's like, I'm prepared to keep going, Judge. So.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, back down that go.
So this is real.
I wouldn't even be able to take them seriously.
Right. Well, I think that I don't know what the judge did because the video cuts off, or at least the one that I saw. But
Berna, the teacher.
Yes, ma'am. Who's talking?
So actually, I just need to ask that this quiz, mean it's one time, like if we start it, so we have to finish within like time that is given on that, or either if we finish like half, or we can do like the other half later, or is there any specific time we have to finish that the quiz?
No, ma'am. You have 1 week. That's the specific time. You could do one question now and another question tomorrow. Yeah. I mean, as a general rule of thumb, again, I'm not a teacher. This is not what I do. I'm a business consultant. I just, I kind of, for whatever reason, found myself doing more and more instruction. So I give you quizzes because the college says I have to give you quizzes, right? But when I teach this professionally, I still give you quizzes. I just don't collect them. I don't care if you do them or not. Unfortunately, the college does not let me do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Bernie, I was literally a couple blocks away from you the other day, over off of like 74th and Oak Park.
Okay.
You know where all the like the little industrial park is over there?
That's where my office, well, I'm in that industrial park. That's Bedford Park, and that's where my office is. That's where I'm.
You ever heard of Nucor? Used to be called Independence Tube. It's on 73rd.
I don't know. I mean, there's 2,000 factories here right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm at essentially 67th and Cicero Avenue, so I'm Midway's right here. If you're familiar with the area where all the Midway hotels are.
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
Okay.
Yeah, my aunt lives at like 65th and Latrobe.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then my ex used to live off of 76th and Pulaski. So yeah, I mean, I know that area like the back of my hand. I mean, I don't know all the businesses like I used to, but yeah.
Did you go to Bogan?
No, so I'm originally from 63rd and Pulaski, but I went to high school in Berwyn.
But I'm from 63rd and Kedzie.
Yeah, so you know the Big Indian.
Yeah.
Yep. My grandmother still lives over there, so.
My uncle had a hair shop right there. It was called Three's Company at 64th, so about a half a block down.
How long ago was that?
It's the hair shop is still there. He just doesn't own it, but his partner does.
Is it still called the same name?
I don't know. There's a little stand there. If you went just a half a block south, so they're probably at 6350 or something like that. It'd be on the west side of the street. It's been there for 35 years.
I'm looking them up.
Obviously, I don't go get my hair cut too much anymore. So
6354 Pulaski. I have to know this. It's like almost like right across the street from Palermo's.
Is there a Palermo's there?
Yeah, that's the original one.
But that's on 63rd Street, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that's gotta be. I mean,
yeah. So no, this is on Pulaski, so it's kind of okay.
It's still like maybe a block away only.
Well, yeah, no, we might know people, but
I wouldn't be surprised.
All right, let's do this. We're going to jump back in, and we are going to finish off this initiating process group here. Let me share the screen. Everyone, real quick, could you please check and just verify that you do have access to the presentation, or someone verify?
It's there.
It's there. Okay, perfect. I see you guys eating. You're making me jealous. I'm hungry. All right. We're going to jump into the next process here. The next process is going to be to identify those stakeholders that we talked about. You see here that this is still in the initiating process group, right? And it is project stakeholder management. That's the knowledge area. This is applied to identify all of the people or organizations that may be involved in the project, or that may be impacted by the project, or that may have an impact on the project. And we will say that these people have a vested interest in the project. Anytime that a stakeholder is identified, that stakeholder's name should be written down along with his or her interest or the organization's interest. How important of a stakeholder are they? What is their potential influence and impact, communication requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So every time that we identify a potential stakeholder, we should write that individual down. The key output here, the purpose of the identify stakeholders process, is to create this output, which is the stakeholder register. In project management, anytime that I use the word register, I want you to know I am referring to a list. That is what a register is. So the stakeholder register is in fact a list of stakeholders. It's important that we recognize that stakeholders can be internal or external to the organization. And a stakeholder can be a specific individual, such as Sarah Kern. It can be a group of individuals, such as MBA class 509 for spring of 2021. Or it can be conceptual, where a representative is difficult, such as the general public, right? Or the general passengers, people who are flying, who represents them. And so any of these can be a particular or be a stakeholder. It's important to recognize that stakeholders may support or may oppose the project. We talked about Walgreens. If Rachel owns mom and pop's drugstore down the street that's been there for 40 years, she's not going to be very happy that Walgreens is coming. She is going to oppose it. We talked about this, I think. Do I care? So I'm going to call somebody who opposes my project, I'm going to call them a negative stakeholder. Do I care about Rachel? Sarah, you shook your head. Yes, why?
Because another negative stakeholder could also impact the project, especially if like they're one of the team members that would have to like proceed or use the output of the project.
Yeah, well, absolutely right. So again, if somebody's going to be throwing daggers at me behind my back or trying to muck up the works or trying to fight me tooth and nail, do I want to know that that person exists? Absolutely, right? Every meeting that I go into, the best meetings that you could walk into are those that I already know the outcome of the meeting before I walk in. And I tell people all the time from a strategic standpoint, if you're going into a meeting, be very careful about asking questions that you don't know the answers to. Okay. And so it is very helpful to understand, before I open something up, how Rachel might respond to that. And I want to prepare for that in advance. Stakeholders can be identified at any time throughout a project. And it's possible that when stakeholders are identified, they may identify even more stakeholders. If you went into Midway Airport, somebody might say, listen, go see Bernie Deere, he can help you. And if you came and seen me, I would tell you all of the people who you need to talk to get that done. So somebody identified one stakeholder who identified several other stakeholders. I do want you to know that failing to identify a stakeholder can have a negative impact on a project. And there's a few reasons for this. Jeff, if you went to, and you're trying to build this Walgreens and you go to pull the permits, and you were doing it in the city of Chicago, but you did not go see the alderman or alderwoman, right? We'll call them the older person. Guess what? In the city of Chicago, the aldermen and alderwomen are incredibly powerful, more so than most other cities around the country. And not going to, I'll call it kiss the ring, right? What's going to happen when you try to build a Walgreens in Ed Burke's neighborhood, and you didn't go to talk with Ed Burke first, right? Well, I mean, I think we see what happens, right? Was it a Burger King? What were they trying to build? He got in trouble for something. In any event, it can have an adverse impact on your project. The other reason that failing to identify a stakeholder in a project can have an adverse effect, stakeholders generally have requirements. So if Ashley is an important stakeholder, I'm going to at some point meet with her and go, Ashley, what's important on this project to you? And she's going to tell me what she wants. Well, if I don't identify Ashley until the end, right, or halfway through the project, and Ashley's going to go, wait a minute, Bernie, no, this has got to do this, right? What's going to happen? So that means that I'm going to have to make a change at some point in the middle of the project or the end of the project. Tell me what that means to
Big money.
Big money, right?
So
we know that the cost of making a change is going up as the project is going forward. The best time to identify stakeholders, especially those that will have requirements, is at the beginning of the project. Okay.
Who actually creates that list then?
The project manager. Your job is to think about everyone who needs to be talked to. And again, a lot of times, some stakeholders will help you to identify other stakeholders. I might say, hey, Kevin, is there anyone else who you think I should talk to? Okay.
Bernie, I have a question about that. Where do you limit it? Because if you have something that impacts the public, where's your cutoff?
So we've heard of a town hall meeting, right? They'll advertise and say there's going to be a town hall meeting for public comment for the public to share. And again, there's reasons that we're doing this. Just because I identify a stakeholder, not all stakeholders are the same, and we're going to help you to identify that. But you want as much feedback as you could possibly get. At some point, though, a good plan now is better than a great plan later, right? We'll move forward with what we have. Krista, I don't have a magic cutoff like where I could tell you just nice and clean, this is it. But does that make sense? So we will try to collect as much input as we could possibly get.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just, I guess it could get out of control when you get the public involved, I guess. I didn't know, like, okay, we have 6 months and that's it.
When I was doing those focus groups for that bag system, And so the guys and gals who were upstairs and they were throwing bags on the curbside, they'd go, well, listen, we need you to come talk to us. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to give you 15 minutes. And they go, the system's got to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, I don't think it's doing any of that stuff. And here's the thing, I'm not saying it's not, but if you wanted that, you should tell your boss who would tell their boss who would tell their boss who would make sure that it gets in there, right? And so not all stakeholders are important enough to make major impacts to the project. I still want to meet with you. I still want to be, again, it doesn't help me to make an enemy out of anyone. We're going to talk about, stakeholder engagement and how do we mitigate certain circumstances. But at the same time, you don't have the, the power or the influence to move the needle. So we will, give them some time and talk with them, but it may not make it into the project. Not all, sometimes you're an important stakeholder and it still doesn't make it into the project, right? I think we should go this way, and it doesn't. So some stakeholders, we already said the project manager is a stakeholder, but so is the end user, right? Whoever's going to use this, they'll be impacted by it. The organization who is doing it, the project management company, the project team members, the management team, sponsor, the influencer, right? Absolutely anyone, right? Investors, suppliers, communities, competitors, everyone can be a stakeholder if they have a vested interest. I also want to point out the stakeholder list will not be a static list. And what I mean by that is stakeholders will come and go into the project. Let's take a look over here real quick. Remember, we talked about phasing plans. So what I'm going to say is, here's my project. My project is we are going to build a new Walgreens over at the intersection of 5600 West and 7900 South. I have broke my project into 5 phases. The first phase is to acquire the land. The second phase is to demo the 3 properties that were there, the 2 residential homes in the other building. The next one is excavation, land clearing, and site prep. Phase 4 is construction. Then finally, the 5th phase is store fill out, staffing, and training. This is how I phase it. If some of you are in construction, I know something they go, Bernie, you're way off. This is conceptual. I want you to know that during this first phase, Katie lives in one of the houses and Krista lives next to her. James owns the restaurant. Sufi owns another restaurant, or the store, et cetera, right? They are all primary stakeholders during the land acquisition, right? But as soon as I buy Katie's land from her and I give Katie her check, Katie's not really a stakeholder anymore. Does that make sense? In here, the construction company, the performing organization, they're a stakeholder down here in the 4th phase, as are the unions, right? And the suppliers, the people who are going to be selling me stuff. They're all stakeholders down here, but they're not stakeholders in the, they're not even going to know that this is happening, right? Until I can get the land. So this might be iterative, right? First, before we can even start planning what's going to happen, are we able to get all of the properties, right? Almost like a monopoly, right? I got to collect all 3 of them in order to build my houses and my hotels. So it's important that we recognize that stakeholders can often be unique to one or more phases, right? You can be a stakeholder here and then leave and then here again and then leave and then here again. So it is not going to be a static list. Fortunately, we will identify stakeholders at the beginning of each of these, because I want you to remember that for the acquire land, we are going to initiate it. We're going to plan it. We're going to execute it, monitor, control, and close. And then for the demo, we're going to initiate it. We're going to plan it, execute it, right? We're going to use all 5 process groups. And what that means is that identify stakeholders. I'm going to identify stakeholders here. I'm going to do it again here. I'm going to do it again here, et cetera, et cetera. If I only did it once at the beginning, this might be a year and a half. You know what? Krista, what's her name? She doesn't even work here anymore. She's been gone for 2 years. What are you talking about? Why do you have her name on there? And James is the new guy. You don't even have it updated, right? So we're going to do this at the beginning of each one of the process groups. At each one of the phases. Our inputs to this section, we will use the project charter so that we have an idea of what we're trying to accomplish. We may also use those the business documents, which may include the benefits management plan and the business case. The project management plan, I'm going to tell you this is a little bit of a chicken and an egg issue. The project management plan is the culmination of all of the planning processes that we are going to go through over the next 3 to 4 evenings. However, this may not be the first phase of the project. Remember, we'll do this each phase. So it is possible. If this is the very first phase, we will not have a project management plan. This hasn't even been developed yet. However, if this is phase 2, 3, 4, 5, we will have something, we will have a workable document, something that we can go back and reference. And we're going to use that to see, okay, who are the stakeholders, and let's update this list, okay? Any other relative project documents, if there's issue logs that are out there, if we have specific requirements documentation, or if there are things like building codes that we need to follow, change logs, any of these may be considered. Any agreements that we may have in place. So if NIAT is my builder, right, I need to know, A, she's a stakeholder, right? I need to know what agreements do we have in place. Enterprise environmental factors, again, are we in Chicago? Are there older people that we need to talk with? Is this a, if you were doing it in the city of Chicago, maybe it has to be union, or if it's a union strong city. What is the performing organization or Walgreens? What do they require? Again, as we're doing this, maybe we're going to need to set up snow plows, right? Because that's what the weather is. And then any organizational process assets. If NIAT has already done 3 Walgreens in the city of Chicago, she's already has a list of stakeholders that she can rely on to help her to create this list to make sure that no one's missed. Remember, missing someone can have an adverse impact on the project. Some tools and techniques. My subject matter experts, again, in this instance, if you were at Midway, I would be that SME. You'd go to Bernie and go, Bernie, who do I need to talk to? And I go, well, you're gonna have to talk with safety and security. Well, I didn't even think of that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I know. And they get pretty ticked off that people won't talk with them, right? But they'll shut you down. Data gathering, I can certainly bring a group of stakeholders together and say, is there anyone else who I should talk with, or what do we think? We can gather data in person, but we can also use questionnaires or surveys, right? These are helpful when we are trying to collect information from a large number of people, where it would be impractical to interview everyone one by one, or to get a room of 500 people together and expect that anyone can make any meaningful contribution. We recently did a strategic plan for an organization that had about 400 people, or I'll say 400 members. We use SurveyMonkey and questionnaires, and we did have town hall meetings as well if people wanted to provide feedback there. But these were by far the greatest source of information, right? Were those surveys and questionnaires. I sent it out to all 400 people, and say that I got 200 responses back. I still got a tremendous amount of information. Brainstorming can be very, very helpful. This is essentially where we say, listen, who do we think the stakeholders are? And I get my project team together. I used to do this as an exercise in class, and I stopped because I think that as the class has evolved, we really do, this is, the class is more and more about establishing the foundation rather than the individual or doing the activities. If, however, you do take any of the subsequent project management classes, you will spend a lot more hands-on time, right? So this class is much more practical theory, I'll refer to it as, right? So it is theory, but it's practical, usable theory. Data analysis, typically, anytime that you see data gathering, you will see it followed by data analysis. It does not help you to gather data that you will not compile somehow. So if I collected 200 surveys from members, right, at some point, I've got to compile that information so that I can turn it, what happens to information, who is in software or data, what happens when I compile data? What does it turn into? Jeff, you said it?
It turns into information.
You got it. I would like everyone to understand the difference between those terms, and they are different. 200 surveys that are sitting by themselves where I have made no attempt to do anything to that data remains in the state of data. This is typically called raw data or raw observations. There is nothing that you can do with data until it has been compiled, which means that we run some type of an analysis on it. We process it somehow. Once we do that, we can find the average, the mean, the mode, we can find the distribution, we can look at the answers that are there. At this point, once the data has been transformed so that it is usable, we would refer to it as information. Information is something that a manager can use to make informed business decisions. Data in and of itself is useless. It is raw observations, okay? So anytime that you see that we will gather the data, we will then compile that data somehow, and we will make the data digestible. A lot of what we will do in project management will be called data representation, which means that ultimately this analysis we take and we put it into a chart or a graph or something that helps our brain to grasp the situation, right? We're going to do a lot of this. And we're going to talk about one, I think, here at the end of this process. So once we have gathered the data, we will analyze it, and then we will use data representation tools, and those tools will help, again, make it very quickly and easily digestible. A lot of times these are charts and graphs and what would be called infographics, right? Things that, again, make it very easy. Prioritization models we will talk about. So we're going to look at several of these. We're going to look at our PI grid, right? Our power interest grid. We'll look at a stakeholder cube and a few other things here in just a few slides. And then meetings. And again, meetings, we will bring groups together to facilitate discussions and, again, extrapolate information from these stakeholders. Who else's interests should we take into account as we plan our project? Sometimes these will be called idea workshops, right? Guided discussions, et cetera, et cetera. This is an important tool, and I apologize because I think it was Krista maybe who brought this up, and she said, well, Bernie, where do you draw the line, right? Who do we really take into account? And I said, Krista, you're absolutely right, because not every stakeholder is the same. Some stakeholders are going to be Rachel, right? We said Rachel owns mom and pop shop down the street. Again, I care that Rachel exists. I really just don't care what she thinks, right? Because you don't have any bearing on it. You're not paying for it. You're not going to work here. You are a stakeholder in the project, but I'm not going to go out of my way to take, Rachel may say, yeah, no, you guys can't open that here. And I'm going to go, hey, thanks for that idea. We'll put that in the maybe pile, right? And we're going to come back. Again, I don't want to make an enemy of Rachel, but she's just not an important stakeholder. Other stakeholders like Sarah are going to be super important. Sarah's the sponsor, right? And so she's the one who's holding the purse strings. Do I care what Sarah thinks? Oh yeah, right? So she's the one who's paying for it. And so as we're looking to say, if we were to do a brainstorming technique and we try to identify all of the stakeholders who might be involved in our Walgreens project, we might come up with 40 stakeholders. That's probably a realistic number. There might be 40 different names and organizations that we might come up with. Some of them could be general public. It could be the neighborhood, right? Could they have a vested interest? Sure, I love Walgreens. Now I got a Walgreens in my neighborhood, right? But they're all just a little bit different than each other. And it's very hard. What is the purpose of collecting 40 names if I'm not going to do anything with it? As a manager, what I need to know is I need a tool. Help me to sort through it. Tell me who's important. Whose interest should I take into account? We're going to use the data representation model that you see on the screen here. This is called a PI matrix or a PI grid, and it refers to power and interest, right? I can put power here on the y-axis and interest here on the x-axis. And we recognize that Some stakeholders will be very, very powerful, right? But they can vary in what their interest is. Other stakeholders can be very, very interested, but just different varying powers. Some stakeholders are going to be both powerful and very interested. So if we were talking about the alder person, the alderman or alderwoman, at the end of the day, is this a powerful person? Yes, it is a powerful person. They're just kind of low interest though, right? At the end of the day, Carmen says, Bernie, do me a favor. Let me show up. I'm going to cut the ribbon, shake hands, tell people I'm bringing jobs to your neighborhood. We're doing all of this great stuff and we're going to high five them out of your hair, right? So this is somebody who doesn't have like a huge interest, but they are powerful, right? I don't want to tell them, forget you. I'm not going to invite you to it. And I don't want to forget them. Over here, this may be the sponsor, or the sponsor actually may be way over here, right? This is a person who is very, very important, very powerful, and also very, very interested in the outcome of the project. Maybe the project manager, right? Down here, this can actually be, I got to go back and look and see who is mom and pop. This can be Rachel, right? So Rachel's E. Rachel's very, very interested, and she's hoping and praying that this thing goes away. She's going to all the town hall meetings. She's voicing concern against it. Hey, don't let this big corporation come in here, shop small. They destroy things, you know what I mean? All of this stuff. So this is Rachel, who is incredibly interested in the outcome of this project, right? Negatively so, but very interested in this. Just unfortunately, Rachel's very low power, right? So she doesn't really have a very wide voice. Some people are not going to be very powerful, but they're not very interested either. Kevin and Sarah and Jeff, they just live in the neighborhood. That's it, right? So, are they interested? Yeah, I guess they're interested, right? They're here. They just don't care, right? Other people, maybe John lives next door to Walgreens, right? John used to have a next door neighbor, Krista, who was really, really nice. But now John's going to live next door to a Walgreens parking lot. John's going to be the first house there, right? John probably has a little bit of a louder voice, right, than some of these people because he has a true vested interest, right? And a little more power. If John asks for something, we might try to accommodate. Why am I telling you all of this? What difference does it make? Well, again, if you had 40 names, if I wrote 40 names on the board behind me, it would be overwhelming. What are you supposed to do with that information? What this tool does is it helps us to put stakeholders into boxes. And I can come up with strategies for each of these boxes. And so I have, if a stakeholder is high power but low interest, I typically don't have to do a lot, right? But I keep them satisfied. Jeff calls and goes, hey, Bernie, do me a favor. The neighbors are complaining. The trucks are pulling out and they're leaving mud everywhere. Have somebody go and clean up the mud at the end of the day. And I'm going to say, Jeff, no problem. I want to make sure that I keep Jeff happy, okay? But I don't have to give Jeff weekly status updates and go, Jeff, here's what's going on. And I want you to, right? It's not that type of a stakeholder, right? So again, just keep him happy if the phone rings. On the flip side, there are stakeholders who are still powerful. They're still in this upper quadrant, but they are very interested, right? So they're over here. These are the stakeholders that I am going to aggressively manage. I'm going to check in. Hey, Sarah, how's it going today? I just want to make sure this is what's going on. Kevin, do me a favor. I want to make sure that you and I connect because I want to know what you think about it, right? Your opinion matters, things like that. Jeff, let me send these reports over to you because I know that you need these reports. These stakeholders, we are going to manage much more closely. And the further that they get up in this far corner, right, I'm going to manage them even more aggressive. Is everyone okay with where we're going with this? On the lower spectrum here, for people who are lower power, again, I might keep them informed. So again, I'm going to hold those town hall meetings and Rachel's going to come and she's going to ask questions and I might answer them. But I'm not going to go out of my way to do certain things, right? Because you don't have the influence to do it. Over here.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, ma'am.
It goes along the lines of a project that greatly impacts the public. I know the Walgreens project doesn't greatly impact the public. It impacts Walgreens and their bottom line. But let's say that we're redoing Lakeshore Drive, which is a huge project that impacts a lot of people. Like, how do you make sure that you're getting feedback from the public? Because there'll be some people that it's going to impact and they just don't care and they don't give you feedback. How do you get the public involved, and how much power do you give the public to drive a project like that?
So if they don't care, they're low interest, right? I care about the ones who are going to be more vocal, who are higher interest. The question that I would ask, so again, they're going to go along this spectrum. How many people is it? One person complaining, yeah, whatever, you're a kook, you know what I mean? Thousands of people. So ordinarily, before they would do that, there would be a town hall meeting. There would be a public discussion. They are currently going to build a Baracco's Pizza, which sounds fabulous right now, at the corner of 79th and Mayfield Avenue. There was an old restaurant there named Giorgio's, which was just dilapidated. And before they did that, there was a public comment period. They had a town hall, and you can go and voice concerns and look at the drawings and ask questions of the builders and do all of these, different things. And if a bunch of people in the room started rattling their sabers, right? Guess what? The city might stop it. They really might. The city of Chicago was able to keep big box stores like Walmart out for a long time because they were not union. How much influence does the public have? It depends on how loud of a voice they have and how much do you care about votes. Is this an election year, right? It sounds terrible, but at the end of the day, if the mayor is making the decision, when do I care most about what you think? During an election year, right? So this is helping us to represent the data so that we can come up with various strategies of how we will manage different stakeholders. The people in this lower area here, they don't really care and they're not really powerful. I'm going to send out a quarterly newsletter coming soon. Walgreens, look at all the wonderful things that Walgreens is going to bring to you, and jobs and great prices and meds and for terrific value, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So this is helping us to, again, get our arms around all of that information. I need a tool to help me to say what is important and what isn't. Who should I be focusing on? This is who you should be focusing on. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. This is a stakeholder cube. In a stakeholder cube, this is new. It looks more intimidating, but I'm going to tell you this is the exact same thing. What this does, though, is, as you might expect, what does a cube do? It adds a third dimension. The last chart that we were looking at was very two-dimensional. This here is three-dimensional. It adds a dimension that is attitude, okay? Because a stakeholder who is very important and very interested and supports what I'm doing is not the same stakeholder as someone who is very influential, very interested, and is opposed to what I'm doing. Does that make sense to everyone? So we have added a third dimension that says, how do you feel about it? Do you have a positive attitude or a negative attitude? Instead of having 4 quadrants like we had the first time that only took into account power and interest, we're going to add attitude. So now I have super powerful people, and they're not interested here, right? So we're going to call them a passive, but they're negative about the project. So we're going to call them a blocker. That's the word we're going to give them, right? So we have an influential because they're powerful, passive because they have low interest, blocker because they are opposed to the project. Essentially what this says is where this strategy would have you, or where this model would have you come up with 4 strategies. This model says you might want to think about having 8 strategies, right? Or 6 if you go, well, we don't have any of these people back here. I don't care about them. And what is your strategy? That large voice that is influential, right? And is opposed to what you're doing. How are you going to deal with them? Okay, is everyone okay with this? So we've just added a third dimension. Okay, this is a stakeholder engagement matrix. It's a very useful tool. If we were to list all of the key stakeholders that we have on the project, we could then list, we could create categories for where the stakeholder currently was. Some stakeholders don't even know that the project is going on, and I'm perfectly happy sometimes, right? So other stakeholders are Again, they're blocking me. They're resistant to what I'm doing. These people here are fighting me. Some stakeholders are neutral. Jeff goes, I could care less, right? Other stakeholders, Kevin is supportive. Kevin, this is my cheerleader right here, right? Him and Sarah out there going, this is a great thing. And they're building support. Every time that a meeting comes up and Rachel says this, Sarah, badminton's back and says, no, this is a great thing for the community. And then leading are people who are actually out leading the charge. And so if I had all my stakeholders listed down the side here, I could use 2 letters. The letter C says, where is the stakeholder currently? The D says, where do I wish they were? What is my desired state for the stakeholder? Okay. The reason why this can be a useful tool is anywhere that there is a disparity between where the stakeholder currently is and where I wish they were. That tells me I've got some work to do with this stakeholder and I've got some work to do with this stakeholder. And the strategy that I take depends on where I want to get them to. This stakeholder here may be just a simple education. I can pick up the phone and I can say, hey, Jeff, just so you know, this is going on. We'd really like your support. I might be able to get them over here pretty easily, right? I might also know that this is where I wish Jeff was. The best I'm going to get is neutral, right? So we can think about what our strategy is. And stakeholders who are where we want them to be, where the current state is the same as the desired state, there is no disparity, I don't have to think about them right now. Once again, where do I focus my effort? There's going to be so much information. I have so much to do. What should I be focused on? This is another tool that helps me to say which stakeholders require some type of an effort to get them to where I wish they were, because it would be in the best interest of the project. Key outputs here, that stakeholder register identifies all of the stakeholders in the project, including some basic information. Who are they? How interested are they? How important are they? Et cetera, et cetera. There can certainly be change requests. It's a little early in the project, but I want you to keep in mind that this may not be the first phase. I may pick up the phone and go, hey, is Kevin there? And they go, yeah, Kevin left, or Kevin is doing something different. You need to talk to Krista now. Okay, perfect. We can update our project. Stakeholders may come and go. And so what we will say is we are going to monitor the stakeholder landscape, okay? This is what the register might look like. This should look however you want it to look, right? I might list a few things and what's your phone number and give me your email address. And that's really all that I'm going to do with this. And so people say, Bernie, can I have a copy? I'm like, you can, but it's not real. It's a generic form, something that I threw together as an example. You will put up here whatever is important to you, okay? We may, once again, if this is not the first phase, if it is the first phase, we will not have a project management plan. But if it's not the first phase, we may also update our project management plan. There may be updates to our communication management, risk management. Again, if I have multiple supporters or this seems to be building some steam, et cetera, et cetera. We will also have project document updates. There are two, actually, there will be a few more, but a project management plan update. The project management plan itself will essentially be comprised of several high-level plans. They are major plans that we have developed. Project document updates are like ancillary, miscellaneous documents, things that may be updated, right? So it doesn't qualify as a plan. That's the only difference between these. These are minor ancillary documents. This is like a major plan, right? Like a staffing plan or a communications plan, stakeholder management plan, scope management plan, budget management plan, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me.
Yep.
In the back log and I think risk register, what is this?
No, we haven't got there yet, and I apologize that I'm showing you some terms that we haven't discussed. We will discuss this on probably night 4. we will end up stepping through 5 of the risk management processes. But we know what a risk is, right? And I'll help you to define it a little bit more, but I'm going to tell you that a risk is any uncertain condition or event that if it occurs, will have some impact, either positive or negative. But we will talk about that on night 5. And we already know what a register is, right? What's a register?
I mean, where you can write down all this?
Well, it's a list, right? So a risk register is a list of the risks that are in a project. And Nia, we will go into great detail on this on, like I said, I believe night 4.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Questions on identifying stakeholders?
Just a kind of a generic question on the one you made before with that little 4-quadrant chart. Do you actually legitimately do that?
I mean, I may, depending on what I'm working on. I think that, Jeff, and that, you know, one of the challenges of if you are doing a lot of project management, I already know who I should be talking to. You know what I'm saying? But if I was going into something that was incredibly new, I probably would do that. All right. I'm going to touch real quick on, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. All right. I want to touch real quick on the extra credit. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll jump into this evening's class. In the event that you are interested in the extra credit, it is 3 full percentage points. So it is 9 points total, or 3 percentage points. What I would like you to do is tell me a business book. It must have a business focus. This is a business class. You are going to be managers. Find a business book, something that has had a meaningful impact on your career, or something where you were able to steal a good nugget of knowledge that you feel had a meaningful impact. I want a very short report on it, not a book report. All I want to know is, why did you think it was important and how did it impact you? And what we're going to do is we will take your paper and we're going to share it with the rest of the class. The idea is, you know, if I could actually show you, I have tons and tons of excellent books that I've read, and they've all had, you know, some impact on me. Each of you has something similar. If you have that, tell us the book, who wrote it, and again, not a book report, so you don't have to cover the whole book. Pick out a lesson from there and tell us what that lesson was and how it impacted your career. You need to have the book approved by me in advance. All your summaries due by class 7. Absolutely no exceptions. Don't ask, please. No exceptions, class 7, because I will post them. Everyone will have access to it. And I will tell you, the only thing that I'm really going to beat you up on, because this is important, read your papers. No typos, no grammar mistakes. 2 grammar mistakes, no extra credit, no second chance. At the end of the day, you're all professionals, right? Use Grammarly, use spell check, do something like that. If you are going to be, I don't have that flexibility. When I give something to the client, it's got to look good. It has to be formatted. Format it like a business paper should be formatted, right? So use 1-inch margins. Don't use size 14 font. Don't use super cute squirt. You know, you're turning in a business document. I want you to think that I am the client. Okay. Any questions on that? And this will be posted on Blackboard as well. All right, let's do this. Let's take 7 minutes. We're going to come back at 8:45 and we'll jump into this evening's class. Thanks, everyone.
Bernard, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So you said that select a business book. I didn't read any business book yet. So what should I do?
Hold on, I almost closed you. You should read a business book. And I mean that. So, you know, there are some really terrific books, and I don't know what your interest is. One book that has always been recommended in this class is a book by a gentleman named Elliot Goldratt that is called The Goal. And it is a truly great book. I don't know necessarily that it relates to project management, but it introduces a concept that is called the theory of constraints. And it's very good for process analysis. If you want something a little shorter, There are some good books. One of them is called The 1 Minute Manager. Another one is called Who Moved My Cheese? Another one is called Fish. There's another pretty decent book that's called A Whack on the Side of the Head, which is a little more creative. If you're into negotiation and conflict resolution, there's a great book. There are actually two books, and they're both very similar to each other. A gentleman named William Ury, U-R-Y. One of them is called Getting Past No. Another one is called Getting to Yes. And it's all about negotiation and managing conflict. There are books about leadership principles, right? Again, if you're going to be a manager, one of the ones that I've enjoyed is called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Being a Leader. There are, I mean, just again, enough to choke a horse. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, tons and tons of them.
So these are available online, right? I can read them online, correct? Or I have to buy them? Wherever the book comes, yeah. So you might be able to get a Kindle, you might be able to get it free online, you might be able to rent it from the library.
Scribed has a lot of books.
Yeah, right.
Scribed, SCRIBD. So would you consider something like How to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, teacher. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
So Bernard, what's your go-to pizza place then? You're on mute. You're muted. Can't hear you. You muted yourself.
In my life, I'd say I only had one bad pizza. So I started my career as a sailor, which I can eat absolutely anything. The only bad pizza I've ever had was in San Diego. And I think that they actually went out of their way to make the world's worst pizza. I can eat a pizza out of a gas station. I can eat it out of a pub. I can eat a frozen Tombstone. I love Giordano's, which is right here. Durbin's is good on 79th Street. Phil's is always a killer pizza off 87th and Ridgeland Avenue. I'll eat Buddies. People don't like Buddies. I'm like, I don't care. I'll eat Buddies. 2 for $1. I'll take it.
Foxes?
Foxes is good. Yep. Yeah. I'm a chubby guy. So you see, I never met a pizza I didn't like.
If you're ever over in the Berwyn area, go to a place called Villanova. It's on Pershing Avenue, which is 39th Street or Pershing Road, whatever it is. And just a half block east of Oak Park Avenue.
If you're in Berwyn, you have to eat No-No's pizza.
Oh God, that's garbage.
Don't
ever tell people that.
Get out of here.
That's
Villanova.
Yeah. Again, I'll eat it all. I don't have my palate is not that sophisticated. So
if you're ever in Elmhurst, Fitz's Spare Keys, they actually have a really good beef and hot jardinera pizza. It's a bar, but they have actually pretty good pizza.
Yeah, that is fantastic. The beef and jardinere, absolutely.
Yeah, I worked in that industry for a long time and was actually still looking at potentially buying a pizzeria. So
I'm going to tell you an awesome pizza, and you're going to think I'm crazy. And I've told this to a bunch of people, and I have never, not once, had people not like it. Gyro and jalapeno pizza is phenomenal. There's a place here. It's called Papa's Pizza on 87th Street. Again, it just sounds terrible, and everyone is like, "Oh my God!" Like, what do you? We went to a big party and I ordered 2 jumbo pizzas. I mean, massive pizzas. And I got one that kind of had everything. And I got one that had gyro and jalapeno. And everyone had because I'm getting what I want, So everyone has a fit. They're like, why would you? Oh my God, you ruined it. I think it's game 5 of the World Series. Everyone's having a fit. Why would you possibly order that big of a gyro? Every piece of the gyro pizza was gone. Every person in the party, the other pizza still had some pizza left. Not a lot, but it did have pizza left. It was a hit, and that's all that they ate for the rest of the World Series. It is fantastic. Every single person says that's disgusting, and every person likes it.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of jalapenos, but I'd try it for sure. To me, there's only a couple things that don't belong on a pizza: pineapple, ground beef, anchovies, and black olives.
Yeah. I could probably eat some of the other stuff. I mean, I wouldn't order it that way, but if I was at your house and you were hungry, I'd eat it. Yep.
Yeah, it's the one thing that sucks about living where I live. Not that it's terrible up here now. I'm up in the North Burbs, but it's not as good as the stuff I was getting when I lived down there.
Yeah. The north side has got a lot of the great food, you know.
Yeah. Pete's Pizza up on Western and Addison's really good.
Mm.
Very, very, like, honestly, like, in my opinion, like top 3 pizza in Chicago. It's that good. So
Katie, is this the Admiral? Was he
Yeah, the Navy SEAL wrote it.
There you go. Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think that'd be a valid business book.
It's really good. I think it's more on that leadership side, but in order to have a positive business, you've got to be able to be a good leader. So I think it's a good one.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you want me to email?
If I was just going to say, if I can ask you, because again, I'm lucky that I can, this alarm is reminding me that I'm supposed to take a pill here. So I wouldn't remember it. So please email me
Okay.
and I will mark it down.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Just a second. All right. Let's jump back in. We'll make some progress here on this this evening 2 here. Close that. Everyone should be able to see my screen now. All right, we are going to skip through some of this review. Sorry, that is the wrong class. Let's try this again. Teaching too many classes. I've done it before where I was teaching 4 different project management classes at the same time. Incredibly confusing to figure out which class is which and what I told you and what I didn't. So I try to keep the project management to just a single class now. All right, module 2. Sorry about that. Any questions from anyone so far? All right, we're doing good.
What is the difference between lock road stakeholder and the negative stakeholder?
So one of them is supporting you and the other one is opposing you. Right, and so they can both have, either one of them can have a vested interest in the project, right? Some dog in the fight, but one is supporting you, one is opposing you.
Okay.
All right, we are done with the first process group, right, which is initiating. We remember that. We move into the second one now, which is project planning. This is the largest group. There are 24 processes here. We remember that there are only 49 processes in all of project management. So almost half, not quite, but almost half of the processes are here in the planning process group. It is here that we will fully plan the project or the project phase. Remember, we said, all I have right now is a charter. I have a high level idea of what it is. At some point though, we are gonna have to actually blow that up and plan it. That's gonna happen right here, right? In the planning process group is when we are actually going to expand on those original assumptions that we had and start to think about what will it actually take. There is an important rule here that I would like everyone to write down. Project management has a rule that's called the 1 in 10 rule. And you can see that here on the screen. What the 1 in 10 rule tells us is every hour that I spend planning, I will save myself 10 hours in execution. I'm going to say that again. Every hour that you spend planning the project will save 10 hours in the execution of the project, okay? And I want you to know that planning is incredibly important. As I said, it's here that the project will be fully defined and planned. Once we get through the planning process group, we will start to use change control procedures, okay? For the time being, all throughout the planning process group, and I'm going to say this over and over again for the next 3 to 4 meetings, everything's kind of in a quasi state of flux, right? So things are, we can establish a plan, but it's not finalized until we complete the planning process group. So this will become abundantly clear. In the event that I need to make a change to the project later on down the road when I'm in the execution process or monitoring, controlling, a lot of times we will circle all the way back to the planning process group. I'm going to give you one additional important thing that I want you to keep in mind. So I told you something. I said here that we have something up here that's called the 1 in 10 rule. And that says that, again, every hour we spend planning saves us 10 hours in execution. With that said, it is important. Listen, project managers love to plan. I don't know, they have a lot of fun doing it. It is important to avoid paralysis by analysis. And what that means is we plan and we plan and we plan. At some point, they go, hey, get out of the office and go start doing, right? You've got to do something. So you've got to balance the idea that we need, adequate planning with the fact that we're actually getting something done. I have been on a project. I met with 2 software developers, and we were putting together a software for a specific industry of court reporters. I am the only non-professional, and I've developed several software programs. And again, this is not what I do, right? But I've written a few software packages that are currently in production. I went to the experts, and one guy said, well, we should do this because this is the best thing to do. And so he was looking into different softwares. How should we build it? And he went through 19 versions of it. And this guy said everything needs to be documented. And he did this. And at the end of it, after about 14 months, nothing happened. This guy was still looking into software. What was the best thing to write it in? This guy was still documenting it. Nothing got done. I bailed from the project. This was more of a pet project, right? So you've got to balance that. We've still got to make stuff happen. Here's what our project matrix looks like. We are going to forget about everything else in the world. We're not going to worry about this. We're not going to worry about this. We are going to focus all of our efforts for the next several nights here in the planning process group. As I said, there are 24 processes that we will cover here. I'm not going to read all of these off. We can certainly do this on our own. But we are going to start this evening with talking about communications, and it's absolutely imperative that you be a good communicator. I will tell you that your success in life, not just project management, but in life, depends on your ability to be a good communicator. I'm a problem solver, and so I have several clients. I have my own file or my own business card in your company, and you send me a file and say, Bernie, fix that. And I say, okay, so I go through all of this paperwork. And again, this is, I don't know if you can see that. That's my life, and my desk looks 5 times worse. And that's 8 or 9 different projects that I'm working on for all different clients, for all different problems. As a general rule of thumb, the #1 problem with all of those comes down to communication, right? And so it is absolutely critical, your success, not only in your business, but with your spouses, right? Your significant others, with your children, with your neighbors, with the other people at your work. It all comes down to communication. So we're going to plan communications, and we're here in the planning process group, as you see. Project communications is the knowledge area. I'm going to apologize in advance. We're going to deep dive into this tonight, okay? And I'm doing that because it's important. Project communications will be a critical success factor. I'm going to tell you that it is One of the most important things that the project manager will do, it is one of the most important skills that the project manager will have is communications. So much, in fact, that we will call it the 90% rule. What that means is that 90% of your time as a project manager is communicating. The project manager does very little on their own. If we're building something, Jeff's the project manager. Jeff's not putting bricks in. Jeff's not driving a backhoe. Jeff's not taking supplies off the truck. Jeff's not drafting legal contracts. Jeff's not doing any of that. Jeff is coordinating all of the resources to make sure everything comes together when it needs to. Does that make sense to everyone? How is he doing that? Through effective communication, okay? The project manager, as we are determining what are our communication needs, I'm going to encourage you to focus on what I will call the big three. All right? The big three are, what do you want to know? When do you want to know it? And how would you like that information? Rachel says, Bernie, I'm only concerned about the accounting information, right? And I'd like to know it each month. Sarah says, Bernie, listen, I don't count, like just if someone gets hurt, let me know. Other than that, just keep going forward. Ashley says, I actually want to have weekly update meetings and I want to know how everything is going. Sarah says, listen, a call is fine. Ashley says, no, you have to come into my office and do this. And Rachel says, do me a favor, just send a report over, okay? Stakeholders will want different information at different frequencies in different formats. We call it the big three. This is me calling it too. This is not a project management term, so you don't have to worry about that. But I do want you to know, what do you want to know? When do you want to know it? And how do you want that information? Communications planning is always the first thing that we will do after we identify the stakeholders. Once I identify them, and we can actually do both of these together, I'm separating it out. And this is, I didn't mention this yet. I am describing each of these processes as though they are happening in a very linear or sequential fashion. You do this, then that's not the way that it's going to happen in the real world. These might happen together, but I have to teach it somehow, right? So certainly when we were identifying the stakeholders, I might say, hey, Krista, can you let me know what's important to you? Do you want to know this? And how often do you want to see that information, et cetera, okay? And we may update this, again, as that stakeholder landscape or stakeholder community changes. The key output here is going to be a communications management plan. And I'm not as concerned with this as I am just kind of understanding some of the basics of communications. So let's do a deep dive here. Communications can be written, right? We can communicate that way. They can be spoken. They can be through media, such as pictures or GIF images, right? They can be gestures, right? Somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? You give a gesture that convey. Actually, so I got rear-ended this morning on the way to work. I wanted to murder this lady, but luckily we were both okay. But in any event, certainly you can give gestures through your hands that convey some specific message. We can also, though, we can carve up communication based on, is it internal to our organization or is it external? We will communicate differently. Rachel's on my team. I'm going to communicate very, very differently with Rachel than I will with John, who is external to the organization, right? The communication can be formal or informal. I may be sending an official incident report, or I may just send a quick text that says I'm running out, BRB. They're both still communications, right? They can be written or oral, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of ways that we can start slicing communications. The project manager, in choosing well of these available strategies, which is the most important? Well, again, I'm going to communicate differently, internal or external. And regardless of where you are, do you support me or are you opposed to me? I'm dealing with somewhat of a contentious situation right now. And when I am communicating in any way with the individuals who are opposed to me, or where the contention lies, I'm dealing with them very, very differently than I am other stakeholders. The physical location, right? if Krista was in the next room, I could say, hey, Krista, right? And I can communicate that way, or I may have to call her. What if Krista's working, deep underground where there is no cell phone? I may have to communicate a very different way. We used to say at Midway, we worked down in the bowels of the airport, right? So you took an elevator 4 floors down and you went underground and where all the conveyors end. Cell phone reception was very, very difficult. We needed walkie-talkies. Communication technology, which is allowed and not allowed, language barriers, knowledge barriers, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things will certainly influence what communication strategy we take. I want to talk about when we are putting communications together, and I'll mention this here on a slide, but it's important that we make sure that our communication is effective and that it's efficient and it's meeting its goals. I want to talk about the 5 C's of communication, and this was added in PMBOK 5 and it stayed in PMBOK 6, and I think it's really good. What it says is when we put a communications together, first off, the communication should be correct. That makes sense, right? So we need to make sure that we have the correct message. And again, grammar and spelling are important. You are a professional. I once had a grown man who I was exchanging information with who used no punctuation, none, and would send me a block of text. My opinion of that individual was very low. How do you, it made it incredibly difficult to read and it was strenuous and I would rather not read your email. Make sure that the messaging is correct. I had someone today who was going to contact the chairperson of a board of directors and tell this individual something. And I said, well, before we do that, I would like you to check here, here, and here and make sure that you don't have that before you go and start that problem. So we want to make sure that what we are saying is true and correct, right? And that we're presenting it in a professional manner, proper grammar, proper spelling. It should be concise. I have another project and there's a lot of contention. There's 3 people who own a company and they're all fighting with each other. A lot of the challenge, I believe, comes from the fact that they are just incredibly busy. And one of the partners will write just the longest email that doesn't need to be that long, that has all of these segues and kind of, alternate paths that it could go down. You want to say things with as few words as it could possibly be said in and no fewer. We're all busy, right? Don't belabor the point. Help me to understand what you want as quickly as possible. If I need that background, if this is going to be a 3-page email, summarize it and then give me the detail below. Make sure that the email is clear. Has anyone ever got an email and says someone needs to do this and it doesn't get done because it wasn't directed to anyone, right? Are you talking to me or are you talking to Evan or Alex? Who are you talking to? So avoid ambiguity in your emails. Be very clear about what you want and when you want it. Make sure that it's coherent and logical. It can be very, very difficult to follow emails that do not tell a story. If you want to be a good communicator, help me build up the story that you want me to follow. I have another client, and he's a really good client, very, very smart. He has had 1 semester of college. He's probably 24 now. He is legally blind and has an incredibly successful business that he started completely on his own. And if he would ask me, I would have gave him the advice that it'll never work, kid, and he's crushing it. One of the challenges that he has is his emails ramble on and they jump all over the place. There is absolutely no story. I don't know when you're changing topics. They're so bad, in fact, because they're not concise and they're not logical. It is impossible to read it on the screen. I have to print it out and take notes along the margin about where I am in the discussion and what he's really asking me to do and how it comes together. Don't make it hard for me to get the message, okay? I'm less likely to respond in a meaningful way or I might miss something. So again, make your communication very, very clear what it is that you want, and then finally control it in presentation. And what I mean by that is a picture's worth 1,000 words. Send me pictures, send me graphs, summarize things, right? Don't send me raw data files, send me the summary. So some things that can help us. As far as communication, I'm going to tell you that communication is a two-way activity. Communication is not complete until the sender confirms that the receiver has understood the intended message, right? And so I'll go a step further and I'm going to say, we want to make sure that the receiver has received the message and has in fact understood the message, okay? So communication is not complete until the sender confirms that the receiver has received the information and understands it. Communication should be efficient. Efficient means providing only the information that's needed. Sarah just wanted to know the numbers. I'm not going to send her a 45-page report of all of the operational stuff and the materials that are coming in and the inspections that have passed. It's going to make it harder for her to get to the information that she wants. I also want to make sure that the information is effective. For the information to be effective, I'm going to tell you that it is critical that we get the right information to the right people at the right time and in the right format. If I get the wrong information to Sarah, does it help Sarah? No. If I get the information that Sarah wants, but I get it to the wrong person, I give it to Rachel, does it help Sarah? No. If Sarah needs the information by Friday because she needs that information to make an informed decision, but I get it to her next Tuesday, does that help? No, right? The right information needs to go to the right person at the right time and in the right format in order for that to be an effective communication. Does this make sense to everyone? Right information, right person, right time, right format. Okay. Let's talk about some basic communication models. I'm sorry, methods, not models, methods, because we are going to talk about a model. First off, we can utilize what is called push communications. When we are talking about push communications, this means a communication where the sender will send the message directly to the receiver, okay? If I was to send you an email, God bless you, Sarah, or if I sent you a text message, or if I left a Post-it note on your computer, or I left you a voicemail, all of these would be push communications because as the sender, I am directing this communication to you. I'm pushing it to you, okay? This is as opposed to pull communication. With pull communication, the sender only makes the information available, but the onus is always on the receiver to go get it. This would be a bulletin board, a project bulletin board, or a community bulletin board, or a knowledge repository. I'm going to post it. It's your job to go read that stuff, right? We have a bulletin board. You need to know the stuff that's on there. Or there's a project website. I'm going to put the information up there, but Ashley, it's up to you to go get that information. So with pull communication, the sender only makes the information available. The onus is always on the receiver to retrieve the information. Does this make sense to everyone? Right? We've seen this. Finally, we have interactive communication methods, which essentially is any type of an active discussion where we can get real-time live feedback from the other person. And it can be a phone call. We can be texting theoretically if it's an active text back and forth, a video call. It can be a discussion, anything to where we're going back and forth. And it says here that this is the most effective to ensure that there's an understanding, because right away, Jeff can go, Bernie, I don't understand. Or I can ask all of you, does this make sense? And I can look around and see if everyone's heads are doing this, right? Or if people are going, right? And I could say, James, do you have a question? This is interactive. I am ensuring that not only are you getting the message, but you're understanding it. When I see your heads and everyone's doing this, at that point, I am going to assume that you're getting it, okay? Each of these is valid. I don't want you to feel that one is better than the other. They all have an appropriate place. However, the nature of the message, the sensitivity, the urgency of the message, the privacy or the confidentiality of the message that we are communicating, all of these things will make me choose one strategy over another strategy, okay? There are 5 types of communication that I want you to think about. So that was methods of communication. We're going to talk about types. These don't matter, so you don't have to don't get super worked up which one's a method, which one's a type. I don't care about any of that. But again, we are just really getting down into the weeds on communication. Why? Because this is 90% of your job right here. You should understand it. The first type of communication that I want to tell you about is called informal verbal conversations. This says hallway conversations or inactive conversations. And I'm going to tell you, this is where you will get yourself in the most trouble. The reason is because I'm going to be strolling down the hall one day and Alex is going to go, hey, Bernie, do me a favor, change that. I'm going to go, oh, okay, Alex. And then I'm going to change it. And Ashley's going to go, Bernie, what are you doing? And I'm going to go, Alex told me to do it. And Alex is going to go, I didn't tell him to do that. I'm going to go, but you said, and you go, no, you misunderstood me. I did not tell you to do that. Informal conversations are very valid. They happen all of the time. In the event that there's any possibility for that, I always follow up and say, Krista, thanks a bunch. I got it. I'm going to be back in my office in about 15 minutes. I'm going to send you an email just to make sure that I understand. And I'm also just going to loop Carmen in because she, she's got to know that too. What am I doing? Covering my butt. I want this in writing, right? So if you would say you don't understand, I go, but I emailed you and you didn't say anything back. And you could go, Alex would go, I didn't check my email. And I go, trying to think of a polite way to say it, tough, right? I'm not your mom, right? I pushed communication to you. The onus is for you to read your email. If you're not going to read your email, there was nothing that was going to make this okay anyway, okay? And so we want to be very cautious about these informal verbal conversations. We also have verbal conversations, but they're formal. This right now is a formal verbal conversation. All of you came here this evening to listen to me talk. There's a purpose. I'm flattered, and I appreciate the fact that you showed up. But this isn't just a random thing. We didn't just start congregating here to talk about random things. There is a defined purpose. There's a defined point to what we're discussing this evening, right? I am controlling the discussion by keeping things moving in a specific direction. This involves things like presentations and meetings. There is another type of communication that is called body language, right? And I'm sure that we've all heard about body language at some point. And we experience it, and we are incredibly in tune with it, whether we recognize it or not. All right. How many people have asked their spouse, what's wrong? Nothing. All right. Are you sure? Because it seems like there might be something wrong. It's not the words, it's the actions, it's everything about it, right? So there was a study done, and the study was called Mehrabian's rule, and it's also known as the 55-38-7 rule. Okay, and I want you to know this. If you Google this, people are going to say, it's been disproved. I don't care. This is real. I don't care what the numbers are. So I don't want you to get hung up in the numbers. Actually, I mean, I do want you to know them, but let's talk about this here real quick. The first thing that I'm going to tell you is that body language, my posture, I'm going to pull this closer so you can all see my smiling face this evening. My posture, my eyebrows, my facial tensions, my mouth, everything about this is telling you something. Also, my stance, right? My actions, or I'm smiling. All of these things communicate something to you. Your brain processes these so fast you don't even know. These subtle things that happen in my face and these little contortions, your brain is awesome at picking these up. What that says is that what Mehrabian's rule says is 55% of the message that you will get, 55% of the message that's communicated is going to come from these verbal, from these nonverbal, from these body language, right? This is where the majority of the message is going to come from. The next 38% is going to come from the tone that you use and how fast I'm talking and the loud and pitch and all of these things, right? It doesn't matter necessarily what you're saying. Like, what is this guy so angry for? I'm not saying anything angry, right? But my body language seems to be generally irritated, right? And my tone is aggressive and it's fast and it's loud and I'm screaming. And so when I talk like that, you think something's wrong, but I'm still saying the exact same message that I would say any other time. You see where I'm going with this, right? And at the end of the day, the last sliver, the last 7% comes down to the words, right? And I could teach the entire class that way and yell at you, and I could say the exact same thing, but a very different message would come across. Your brain will not let you ignore those other factors, the way that my face is and the way that my tone is, okay? Why am I wasting your time to explain this to you? Well, we live in an incredibly digital world, and how do we communicate? Text message, right? Or phone. Has anyone ever been misunderstood in a text message or in an email? Has that ever happened?
Of course, that's why I put LOL or haha at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Why are we so prone to be misunderstood in writing?
Because you're not seeing people's reaction or their body language, so it's hard to tell if they don't put any expression or any emojis.
Yeah, absolutely. You're giving up 93% of your ability to communicate. We give up right there, right? In a phone conversation's a little bit better, right? So James says, hey, did you talk with Sarah? And I go, yeah. And you go, well, how was she? I'm like, she's a little pissed, right? I can't see her face, but I can hear the way that she's talking to me. She's a little irritated about the situation. And face-to-face is the absolute best, and video overcomes that. And Katie and James, you both mentioned emojis or LOL, and those truly were invented to try to overcome, a little bit of that, right? And to say, oh, I'm kidding or whatever it is. So we're trying to add that emotion back because of Mehrabian's rule. So I want you to understand that the sensitivity of the message is important. I also want you to understand it is important for you as I'm presenting. I want to watch around the room, right? And so I say something and Nihat is just sitting there and she's like this, right? Or right now I'm teaching, Carmen's like this and I'm like, am I boring you? Or again, if you're falling asleep, I am reading all of your body language. I want your cameras on because I'm feeding off of that, right? By the same token, you want to be aware of how your body language comes across to people. I have had so many people say what a mean guy I am. And I'm like, why would you say that? And, or, people like, Katie, how do you like Bernie? He's so mean. And Katie would be like, why would you say that? Bernie's not mean at all. He's a nice guy. It's like, well, look at him, right? And I truly do have, when I'm paying attention to you, if I'm watching something, I look like I'm absolutely furious. And I mean that. And it's just my concentrating face. And the only reason I picked up on this is because of this right here. If I was listening to you, I'm one of the squares, right? I'm one of the Hollywood squares. I can see my own face. I recently had a roundtable event, and so we had a publicist there, and she was taking pictures of everything. And I'm hosting this event, and I was entertained. I wasn't upset about anything. In the pictures, I look like I'm absolutely furious. Like the pictures, I'm like this, like the whole time, and they're like, why were you so mad? And I'm like, I don't know why I look. I didn't know. I never knew that my face looked that way. I was paying attention. That's the way that I look when I'm hanging on your every word and I'm listening intently. And so I'm trying to change that, right? And so Katie finally goes, Bernie's a really nice guy. Talk to him. And then Jeff talks to me. He goes, he is a nice guy. Thanks so much. I mean that. I've had that problem my whole life.
Correct. Resting jerk face.
Resting jerk, very good. And so I didn't want to say it. I couldn't come up with the jerk part of it, but absolutely. And again, that's my paying attention face. So I need to be cognizant of how I'm affecting other people, right? Absolutely. Okay, so we understand nonverbal language is very, very important. And in the event that we are going to choose a form of communication that gives up body language and or tone, right, we are going to consider that, and we are going to go out of our way to make sure that we are communicating just a little bit extra so that we are not misunderstood, because it is critical. Your job, 90% of your existence is communication. You better be good at it, okay? All right, let's get that off the screen. Talk about informal written. This is text messages, sticky notes, memos, any of this stuff. Is a sticky note or a text message, can that be admissible in court? What do we think? I see a lot of shit, absolutely, right? Everything is admissible in court. Every last thing is admissible in court, absolutely. And then we can also have formal written, which are letters and contracts. Somebody asked about an LOI or an MOU or an LOA or any of these other documents. These are a little bit more formal, okay? So different types of communications. In terms of project communications, I want to go back to what we talked about earlier this evening. And again, I won't belabor the point, but we talked about data, right? Project management is going to call it work performance data. So they're going to have this fancy thing. We're going to have all of these inputs, and they're going to go, Jeff, work performance data is an input. And I'm just going to tell you, they're just saying raw data, raw observations, right? Once we have compiled this data, it says here that it's unusable in its current state, right? I can't use data the way that it is. I've got to do something. I've got to process it. Once I've actually compiled it, my data will now become work performance information, right? Information is actually useful. It's compiled. I can leverage that information to make informed business decisions. And that's ultimately what I need to do as a manager. Oftentimes, I will need to take that information and I will need to package it, right, in an easily digestible fashion. Again, charts and infographics, matrices, grids, prioritization models, whatever we need to do to help people to rapidly ascertain what I'm trying to communicate. And it says here that this is suitable for easy presentation, easy digestion, right? So work performance reports take this information and put it into a format that is very easy to digest. Are we good with that? So project communications, okay. I want to talk about communication channels real quick. This is the first formula that I'm going to give you in the class. I will tell you to memorize it. And I will also tell you, I promise you that there is a trick question on tonight's quiz. I'm not trying to trick you. It's an actual question, not Bernie's question. This is a live question that was on the exam. It's a good question though. So when you come to this question, I'm going to tell you, approach it cautiously, and probably 7 or 8 of you are still going to get it wrong. Pay particular attention to it, right? Okay. So when we talk about communications, my job as a project manager is not only to be a good communicator, but I have to control the communications. Jeff is a project assistant. Carmen is the architect. Katie is the engineer. Jeff is the client. Ashley is the older person. John is the construction, right? There's lots of different people involved. There's lots of roles. Well, here's the thing. Sarah can talk with James, and James can talk with Krista. But Krista can also talk with Ashley. Krista can talk with Jeff. Krista can talk with Katie, on and on, right? And so when we think about it, there are a lot of different ways that communication can flow on the screen here, because every one of you can talk with the other person. And very quickly, communication become overwhelming, right? So if I have a project that has 8 stakeholders, a project manager, and 8 other stakeholders, again, the PM can talk with stakeholder 1, the PM can talk with stakeholder 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. But stakeholder 1, in addition to this channel of communication, right? Stakeholder 1 can also talk with stakeholder 2, stakeholder 3, 4, 5, and on and on. Very quickly, we see that it gets complex. Instead of trying to draw these lines out, because they will ask you how many lines of communication there are, we can use this formula here. N multiplied by n minus 1 divided by 2 where N is the number of stakeholders or the number of people that are involved. In this instance, N would be 8 because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus the PM is 8. So this would be 8 times 8 minus 1 divided by 2.
28.
Yep, and absolutely. And I'm going to press pause here for 1 second. So what I want to say, this won't let me write on the screen for some reason like it ordinarily would. Let's say that there were 4 stakeholders. How many channels of communication are there if there were 4 stakeholders?
6.
Everyone agree with that? We're going to take 4. We're going to multiply 4 times 4 minus 1 or 4 minus 3. Okay. And then we're going to divide that by 2. Katie? How are we doing? Good. Okay. So if I had 4 people on the project, there are 6 different ways that communication could flow, right? Now, I'm going to add James to the project. There are 5 stakeholders now. How many communication channels are there?
10.
So we added 1 stakeholder and we went from 6 communication channels to 10. We now add Rachel. There are 6 stakeholders now. How many communication channels are there?
15.
Does everyone see where we're going? I don't necessarily care that you memorize this formula. You will need it for the quiz, so I encourage you to do that. As a project manager, we won't necessarily use this formula though. What I want to illustrate is that as we add stakeholders to the project, communication will get exponentially more and more complex and complicated, okay? So again, I would never use this formula, in a matter of practice, but you will need it for the quiz, right? And what I want you to take away from this is that increasing stakeholders, it's not a one-for-one relationship. It is exponential. All right. All right. Now, when we think about this, some projects truly may have hundreds of stakeholders, right? And those stakeholders may be spread out all through the world on different time zones, speaking different languages with different cultural methods of communicating. All of this makes for a challenging prospect of what we have to do to make sure that communications are flowing properly. So again, this is incredibly important. All right. I'm going to move a little quicker through the next sections. Again, nothing terribly difficult, but I want to make sure that we have time to complete everything and still have a few minutes for questions. I want to get into the basic communication model, and this is as basic can get. But again, your job is to communicate, right? We have 2 people or 2 parties. We have a sender and we have a receiver. The sender is over here. This is the sender, who is Katie. Katie wishes to communicate something to the receiver, who is Carmen. In order for Katie to do that, the first thing that Katie has to do is say, I have to encode this message somehow. Encoding it means she puts it into words, into images, or into some graphic, something that she believes if she takes this and presents this to the receiver, who is Carmen, Carmen is going to understand that, right? So whatever is in my brain, I've got to put it into words or pictures or spoken language or something. Makes sense to everyone, right? The next thing that I have to do is I have to say, well, listen, so the message, I have it encoded, but I'm holding it. I gotta lob it over here somehow. I've got to get it over to Carmen. I recognize that there is space between Carmen and I. That space may be across the table. It could be on another end of the building. Katie, where are you right now?
Chicago.
Carmen, where are you?
Mount Prospect.
Okay. Could be cities apart. Somebody's in the GIS. I'm sorry. Somebody is located in another part of the country right now, or another part of the world. All of these will have different strategies, right? So what we will do is Katie's going to say, well, I've assessed I've assessed what's between us. I am going to choose a medium to get that message. The medium is what I am going to use to transfer the message over to Katie. The media can be meetings, It can be a phone call. It can be a text message. It can be a picture, word of mouth, an email, newsletter, billboards, intranet. I can do skywriting. I can put a billboard on someone and have them walk down the street. Whatever I do, this is anything that I might leverage, that I can take this encoded message and I can leverage these. And all that the medium does is it covers the distance between us. It is intended, the medium carries the encoded message from the sender to the receiver. Once the receiver gets that message, the receiver then is going to decode the message. And so Carmen is going to say, I think I understand this. Here's what I think it is, okay? So you have to then interpret my encoded message, read what it says, and think about what that means for yourself. Listen to my words, look at the picture, et cetera, et cetera. I do want you to know that every medium, right, or every form of media has something special that it will go through that is called noise, okay? So Katie needs to understand that her encoded message, depending on the media that she chooses, is going to pass through some form of noise. Noise can be a number of things. It can be the receiver's education level. If you were talking with a cardiac surgeon and they said, Jeff, this is thrombo, cardiac, nuclear, pulmonary, et cetera, and we're going to do this in the major ventricle and then the left cavity and the article and the AV node and all of this stuff, you would go, listen, I mean, I heard the words that you said, but I'm not having any luck in decoding them, right? Because I don't have the same education that you have. I don't know the same things, right? And so the education level can be, it can be a barrier to communication. That's what noise is. It is a barrier to communication. It can be language or culture. Sometimes you may have difficulty understanding me. Naya, or I'm not sure, like, is anyone having difficulty understanding me? I have an accent. This can be challenging and it can certainly serve as a barrier or can make communication more difficult. Physical distance can make it harder. If we were all in the same room right now, it might make it easier for us to talk to each other, right? But fortunately we have this, but if we were just on a call, it might make it more complicated. Negative comments from either party, or we just don't like each other. Krista can't stand me, right? She already said she found out I'm a jerk. Look at my face. And so that can make it so that people are standoffish. And so you're purposely being obtuse about receiving the message. Hostility. Sometimes noise is noise, right? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. There's some background noise here. Or there's some I was on a call earlier on, and I don't know, it was like a call from the 1970s, the conference line that we use. I don't even know what it was, but it was absolutely horrible. And it really was. And I kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm not getting that. Are you saying this? Right? And everyone was having trouble. Noise can be noise. When we talk about noise, it is anything that interferes with with Krista's ability to, I don't remember who was I talking to pass the message over to Rachel. I don't know if I swapped it. Okay, so we have the receiver, right? When is communication complete?
When receiver understand.
Got it, great job. So I told you, communication is complete when the sender knows that the receiver has received the message, right? And so I want you to know this. Right? Communication is not complete until the sender confirms that the receiver has received and understood the message. How do we do that? Well, what's going to happen is the receiver is going to encode his or her own message. We'll call that message a feedback message. How the receiver gets that feedback message over to the sender and says, got your message, is up to him or her, right? You're going to choose your own media, and that media will also pass through its own nose, and then the sender will get it, right? I am notorious about this. The people who send me messages within my team, if it's a project communication, I will very often send you back either one word or two words, or I guess 3 words. I will send you back confirmed. That's it. That's all I say, confirmed, period. I'm letting you know that I received it. I am completing This is my job, is to complete the loop, right? Or I will say confirmed and understood, and that's it. It is very quick, and it gives Rachel that warm and fuzzy. Bernie got my message and he understood it. It is important. Does everyone understand that? Excellent. All right, we've done enough there. Talk about the inputs. The project charter, going to help us to know what the project is about. The project management plan, once again, if this is not the first phase, and we may have a stakeholder engagement plan, as well as a resource engagement plan to help us identify who's inside the organization and who's outside the organization, and how are those individuals involved in the project. Other project documents may be things like the stakeholder register and also the requirements documentation, which we have not created this. This will be the very first thing that we're going to create when we come back next week. Other inputs include enterprise environmental factors. Where does the project take place? Maybe it is truly loud. Phone communication is not going to work. We're going to choose text. Why? We're wearing hearing protection and you can't, or it's too cold and you can't do it. You know, maybe it's going to be someplace that is very, very dirty. You're down in the sewer and it's sanitary, or it's wet, or it's dirty, or it's dusty. You know, we may use radios or other things. Organizational process assets. What do we have available to help us to plan our communications? Tools and techniques. We may leverage our SMEs. Go to people who are good at communications. We're working on something right now through Microsoft Exchange. And we're working with an IT person because I don't know that's not my wheelhouse. Otherwise, policies and procedures, understanding the two-way communication model methods, the difference between push and pull, those strategies, and also the technologies that are there behind there. The communications assessment, again, so once I understand who the stakeholders are, right, we had that stakeholder register. What do you want to know? When do you want to know it? How do you want that information? What channels do we have? What's acceptable? I often ask, can we use Twitter? Is that okay? So I have to communicate to a large number of people. You know, that's quasi push and quasi pull. You know, we can make it so that at the end of the night, Krista can go look at all of the tweets that came up, but she can also choose to get a notification anytime that I tweet something clever and witty, right? And so we can use push and pull at the same time. Various communication technologies. This can be as dumbed down as a bulletin board, right? So I have a board in the hallway and I say, you know, here's all of my employment stuff that I have to put up. But it can also be social media, text messaging, websites, group text, things like that. How we choose the technology that we choose will depend on a number of things. And this is not an exhaustive list, but what is the urgency of the information? Sarah's folks are going to go out there and they're going to start digging a hole tomorrow because she's going to start laying some pipe out here. And what happens is Krista's group is out there tonight and they start digging down. They actually hit another pipe and she goes, I don't know, that looks like it could be a gas pipe, right? And she knows that Sarah's folks are going to come back in the morning and they're going to start digging to keep on moving down the line with that. That's pretty urgent that Sarah knows that information. I'm not going to put a sticky note on Sarah's laptop and say, BTW might be a super hazardous situation. Be careful, right? I'm going to call, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to say, Rachel, you're standing here until somebody makes direct contact with Sarah to make sure that no one digs, because it's urgent, it's critical, it's communication that needs to occur now. A voicemail may not do it. An email may not do it, right? I need something that is immediate due to the urgency. The availability and reliability of technology, right? I go, you know, I'm not going to email Ashley. She never gets my emails, or she doesn't respond, or her stupid phone never ever works, or I know there's no communication when they're downstairs. We're going to choose a different method. We're going to get radios. The ease of use. This is if you went back 12 months ago, every one of you right now, you guys are Zoom gurus. You guys, you know, you guys are doing like Zoom like this, Zoom and Teams and Google Meets or Google Hangouts and all of these, because we're doing it right, on a daily basis. But if you went back a year ago and I was working with you, I'd have to be like, okay, Krista, do you see this? Okay, you're gonna go here, click that. Okay, yep, you're gonna hit, okay, yep, hit install. Okay, good, and you know what I mean? It was incredibly clunky to do this. COVID has forced this rapid adoption of this type of a technology so that everyone is familiar with it. Grandparents are familiar with it, right? They want to see their children and stuff like that. But ease of use, how difficult is it? The project environment, again, is it sensitive? Is it dirty? Is it loud? Maybe we don't have internet. You could be out in the middle of an oil rig, right? In the middle of an ocean. What time are we working? The sensitivity or the confidentiality of it. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to fire James. I'm not going to use pull communication and post a notice out on the bulletin board and says, guess who doesn't have a job? It's James this week, right? It wouldn't be appropriate. It's a sensitive thing. We would actually have a one-on-one discussion with that, right? Hopefully no one's breaking up with anyone by text messages, a little more sensitive than that, right? So we recognize we will choose the approach to communication based on the sensitivity of it as well. Talked about the communication model, right? The two-way model, the sender and receiver model, it is sometimes called. As far as methods, we recognize we have interactive, push or pull communications, interpersonal communications. Once again, I'm going to go back to your soft skills, your ability to connect with people and be able to communicate will be critical. Data representation, don't make me work for it. Hit me with the information that I need as soon as you can possibly get it, right? There's nothing worse than someone who, when you start talking to me, there's just all of these segues that are going on. I'm like, sometimes I want to shake a client. I'm like, listen, what do you want to tell me? I am an expensive guy to tell your life story to. Just say what you have to tell me and let me get some, let me get this over to you. Make things as easily digestible as possible, okay? We are all busier and busier. And then meetings, again, will be one of the key tools and techniques that you leverage to communicate, right? Obviously. It can be virtual, in person, et cetera, et cetera. Outputs may be the communications management plan. Again, the big three is for those stakeholders that we identified. What do they want to know? When do they want to know it? And how would they like that information? If we already have a project management plan in place, because this is not the first project phase, we certainly may update that. And the communication needs may change. Krista started out and she said, Bernie, I want to know everything. And after 2 weeks, she's like, yep, that's enough. No more of that. I only need this and that, right? So I'm not reading it. It's too clunky. It's too much or it's too often. We may update different project documents as necessary. And this is where we're going to leave it tonight. Any questions on planning communications? What does the 90% rule refer to?
Body language.
So there is Mehrabian's rule, but we said that was the 55-38-7 rule, right?
90% of your time will be taken up with communication.
Got it. Great job, James. 90% of the project manager's time will be spent communicating with his or her team, right? What does the 1 in 10 rule tell us?
What?
The 1 in 10 rule.
For every 1 hour of planning, there should be 10 hours of execution.
You got it, Alex. Good job. For every hour we spend planning, we will save ourselves 10 hours of execution. Planning is important. How many processes are in the planning process group?
24.
24, you got it. When does the project actually begin?
When the project
charter has been signed.
When the project charter has been signed, absolutely. Who signs the project charter typically?
Project sponsor.
A sponsor or somebody who has funding authority, right? Absolutely. If I was to post a message and I hung it on the wall here and I anticipated that my employees would come in and see that message tomorrow, what is that an example of?
It's
pull communication. You got it. The sender makes the communication available. The onus is on the receiver to go out and get that communication. When is communication complete?
2 ways.
So it is two-way communication, but give me a little bit more.
Same, that's when the receiver understand or confirm.
When the sender has confirmed that the receiver has received and understood the message, right? What is an organizational process asset?
Things that are already in place, like SOPs and things like that.
Perfect, Rachel. Something that we have available to us like a standard operating procedure or policy or template or previous lessons learned. Absolutely. What version of the PMBOK are we in?
6.
How many processes total?
49.
49.
How many processes are in the initiating process group?
2.
You guys are awesome. What questions can I answer for you tonight? We are going to take the quiz, right? So you have 1 week, essentially. You have 12 hours short of 1 week. The quiz should be available at 10 p.m. sharp. You will have 1 week. It goes offline at 10 a.m. So do not call me at 11 a.m. and say I missed it, or at 4. It goes offline at 10 a.m., right? Do not miss it. If you do have any questions that come up, feel free to shoot me an email. And like I said, if you want, we can schedule some time to talk either individually or as a group. If there's nothing else, everyone have a wonderful evening. I'll stay on for a few minutes just in case anyone does have any questions.
Bernie, the first quiz covers last week and this week.
Correct. The first quiz is on modules 1 and 2, which is last week and this week.
Okay.
Give me a second. You just brought up a great question, Krista. Let me see.
So
What is the
You know
quiz
what? Yeah.
format?
Do me a favor. I'm going to hold off on quiz 1. I'm going to hold that off because we didn't cover all of the course tonight. So I'm going to mess this up a little bit. So I'm actually going to make sure that that does not post, and we will not take quiz 1 until next week. Everyone, so you know, the quizzes are 10 questions. I mean, these things are they're easy. They're not incredibly in depth. You know, again, it's you don't have to flip through the books. I'm more concerned about high level concepts than I am about getting into like the nitty gritty details of things. My goal is when you leave this class, you can plan and execute a successful project. That's all that I want from you. I don't want to beat you up with small details. I don't want to have you memorize, you know, things that you're never going to use. I want to help you to put together all of the stuff that you have learned through your professional and college career so that you can go out and be awesome for an employer.
So, but you said that the quiz number 1, including our previous lecture and this one lecture?
Correct. So now what I'm telling you though is that I'm not going to post it. We will actually end up taking it next week instead of this week. So we'll figure it out. We may end up taking 2 quizzes at some point. One night we'll figure it out. And again, the quizzes, they should be easy points.
And the quiz is also available on Blackboard?
They will be, but it will not be tonight, just to confirm. But yes, they will be available on Blackboard in the content section. I think it says assessments.
There's nothing showing up there yet until you post the first quiz.
Yeah, I'm able to set the exact time that that I want. So I'm going to.
Yeah, it's not available yet.
Yeah. So here under the content section of Blackboard, under assessments, this is where it would be. And you can see the folder though, right? Yeah, you can see the folder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. We see the testing schedule. We just don't see the quiz.
Perfect. Yeah, so this first quiz here, see how it says item is hidden from students. Again, I set the time. If I made it available before class, you wouldn't be listening to the words and you know that are coming out of my mouth, and you'd be trying to do the quiz so that you don't have to do something later. And I'm an egomaniac. I need all eyes focused on me.
Are the quizzes timed?
They're not. Yeah, you have 1 week. No,
Yeah,
you can start and stop them. You can take as long as you want. I don't care. You just, as long as you hit submit before 10 o'clock next week.
Oh, so there's 10 questions and you have, the time is until 10 a.m. Or whatever it is, 7 days.
You do one question a day.
You can do 1 question a day. I don't care. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You know, again, I'm not big on any of the quizzes, but it's an MBA class. You should be tested and make sure that you're retaining the information. But this is generally a pretty engaging class. I think a lot of people enjoy project management. And again, I will offer this too. If for some reason there is something that you're not enjoying, please, send me an email or something like that. I am open. At the end of the class, I will ask everyone, please give me feedback. I want to know what you liked and what you didn't like. I'm consistently trying to make the courses, better and better. So too fast, too slow, boring, too long, whatever it may be.
Bernie, is there anything that we should do to prepare for next week's class? Any reading or handout?
Jeff, the only thing that I would say is I would, just read the presentations, and I will make sure that they are available on Monday. So just kind of page through those. As I said, so there are two difficult topics in project management. I think we're going to run into the first one next week, and that really just comes to finding the critical path within a project. And we're going to make this thing easy peasy, right? So, but I've been teaching this long enough. I know where you're going to struggle. And so with that, we'll make handouts available. I will ask everyone to print those in advance. Let me see if they are available. And I don't like showing these either too early because I don't want people to be intimidated by it. Otherwise, you all drop my class before we get to the first, before I get a chance. Is everyone okay too? How does everybody like Zoom? It's better than Blackboard, right? Blackboard's fun. Okay, and it's very difficult for me to see you as well. Sorry, just a moment. I want to make sure that one thing's available that I will ask everyone to print. So there is a worksheet. Under course worksheets, which everyone should see, it is not posted. It will be posted tomorrow. And so there is a worksheet that I will ask everyone to print.
For next week.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, if that's it, everyone, actually, I'll post this tonight. Files to post. If there's nothing else, everyone, you can certainly.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your patience tonight.
See you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night.